Chapter 532. When Shao Chun successfully passed the 30th heaven and appeared in the valley, if there were others present, they would definitely be shocked because Shao Chun's current state was simply too miserable. His entire body was covered with wounds, and blood was constantly gushing out. His clothes had long been dyed red by blood, and his aura was extremely weak. Shao Chun also smiled helplessly about his current state. There was no other way. This was the rule of the 100 Refinements Valley. In the past 20 days, Shao Chun was almost driven crazy by the 100 Refinements Valley. He didn't know who created the 100 Refinements Valley. It was simply psychopathic. From the moment Shao Chun entered the 100 Refinements Valley, he knew that the assessment of the 100 Refinements Valley would definitely be more difficult than the previous one. However, as he progressed, Shao Chun realized that it could no longer be described as difficult. It could simply be described as psychopathic. From the 9th heaven onwards, Shao Chun's opponent became himself. It was indeed the case after that. The requirement of every heaven was the same, and that was to defeat the self in front of him. However, as he progressed, the strength of the other self that Shao Chun faced became stronger and stronger. If he wanted to pass the level, Shao Chun had to constantly break through himself in order to win. This was still acceptable. However, the assessment of the 100 Refinements Valley was obviously not just about that. After the 15th level of heaven, Shao Chun would have to face another version of himself. Not only would their strength continue to increase, but their numbers would also continue to increase. Could he withstand this? Starting from the 15th level of heaven, Shao Chun had to face 2 clones of himself. Subsequently, the number of clones increased with each subsequent level of heaven. It was not until the 25th attempt that the number of people stopped increasing. However, this also meant that Shao Chun had to face the combined attacks of 10 of himself every time. Furthermore, he had to defeat all 10 of himself in order to pass the level. There is no need to explain the difficulty of this. It could be said that from the 15th heaven onwards, Shao Chun had gone all out in every battle. If it wasn't for Shao Chun's firm mental state, he would have given up long ago, because at a glance, it was simply impossible to win this battle. Every aspect was identical to Sure Feng's, not only in terms of cultivation realm, but also in terms of strength, speed, combat awareness, and soul power. In fact, Sure Feng's clone was even slightly stronger than Sure Feng's. Against such opponents, it would be difficult to defeat them one-on-one, let alone 1-on-10. In the face of such a test that could be said to be impossible to win, Shao Chun gritted his teeth and persevered. However, after the 25th heaven, although the number of people did not increase, and Shao Chun faced 10 people in each heaven, there was a time limit. Previously, every time he passed a heaven, he deliberately rested as he pleased. There was no fixed time, and it was completely under his control. In this way, he could adjust his condition to its peak before continuing. But from the 25th heaven onwards, it was completely different. Every time you passed a heaven, there would be a fixed amount of time to rest, and it would become less and less. At the beginning, there was only 1 day. Later on, there was a constant change. Just like now, after successfully passing the 30th heaven, Shao Chun quickly received a message in his mind. That was, he had to challenge the 31st heaven within 6 hours. Otherwise, he would be considered to have failed. He would be directly sent out of the valley and returned to the original entrance. There were only 6 hours to rest. After knowing this, Shao Chun suddenly had the urge to curse. Looking at his current condition, even if he was given a day, it would be difficult for him to recover, let alone 6 hours. Which bastard created this 100 Refinements Valley? Although he cursed in his heart, Shao Chun did not waste any time. He immediately sat down cross-legged, swallowed a healing elixir, and began to adjust his breathing. Time was of the essence. Moreover, after 20 days of hard work, Shao Chun's cultivation had already reached the pinnacle of the lesser completion Tao querying realm. He was not far from breaking through again. At such a critical juncture, how could Shao Chun give up? If he could not break through to the advanced Tao querying realm in one go in the 100 Refinements Valley, he would undoubtedly have to waste more time to break through. Xiao Chan was unwilling to let go of such an opportunity. Although he knew that it would be more and more difficult to break through later, Xiao Chan did not have the slightest intention of backing down. Since there were only 6 hours, he could only make the best use of his time. He would recover to whatever extent he could. Xiao Chan intended to continue breaking through. Xiao Chan even wanted to see what the reward would be if he passed the 36th heaven. While Xiao Chan was making the best use of his time to heal, the Tianqi sect outside was in an uproar. The originally deserted peak of the back mountain was now filled with people. Elders, deacons, and disciples. Everyone was dumbfounded as they stared at the highest light spot above the black door. This light spot naturally represented Xiao Chan. At this moment, he was between the 30th and 31st heaven. In other words, Xiao Chan had successfully passed the 30th heaven. Oh my God, who is this person? He actually passed the 30th heaven. Many disciples looked at the light spot that represented Xiao Chan and were shocked. They could not help but exclaim, "The 30th heaven." This was a height that no one had ever reached since the opening of the 100 Refinements Valley. It could be said that this was a brand new record. Moreover, it was a record that left everyone dumbfounded. Because of this, almost all the disciples of the Tianqi sect had gathered at the peak of the back mountain. Everyone was guessing who this person was. Was it Gu Lingyao, Chao He, or the mysterious Xiao Chan? There were all sorts of guesses. Moreover, it was not just these disciples. Even the elders and deacons were discussing softly. It has only been 20 days. There are still 10 days left. Do you think this person can pass the 100 Refinements Valley? You mean pass the 36th heaven? That's impossible. Although I don't know the origin of the 100 Refinements Valley, countless generations of disciples have proven that it's not so easy to pass the 100 Refinements Valley. It's already heaven-defying enough to pass the 30th heaven. Some people guess that Xiao Chan could pass the 36th heaven in one go and pass the 100 Refinements Valley directly. However, most people thought that it was impossible. After all, the difficulty of the 100 Refinements Valley was indeed too great. Moreover, it had nothing to do with cultivation. The difficulty of any cultivator who entered was actually the same. After all, the 100 Refinements Valley adjusted the difficulty according to the challenger's own situation. Most people thought that it was impossible for Xiao Chan to pass the level. However, there was still a small group of people who hoped that someone could pass the 100 Refinements Valley. After all, this was a historical scene. If Xiao Chan really did it, then everyone present would be witnesses to history. Chapter 533. Everyone was guessing Xiao Chen's identity, while secretly looking forward to how far Xiao Chan could go. If Xiao Chan could really pass through the 100 Refinements Valley in one go, the entire Celestial Equal sect would probably be in an uproar. He did not know what kind of commotion his actions had caused. 6 hours passed in the blink of an eye. With the help of the healing elixir, Xiao Chen's physical condition improved a lot. However, he was still far from his peak. Dragging his body, Xiao Chan did not choose to give up and resolutely stepped into the 31st heaven. At the same time that Xiao Chan entered the 31st heaven, Gu Lingyao and Chao He, who were the closest to Xiao Chan, were also trying their best to climb higher. Gu Lingyao had already reached the 27th heaven, while Chao He was currently at the 22nd heaven. As for the others, they were still below the 20th heaven. Under normal circumstances, it was basically impossible to break through the 20th level of the 100 Refinements Valley if one was not a king of geniuses. Therefore, other than Xiao Chan, Gu Lingyao, and Chao He, the other prodigy disciples were still struggling bitterly below the 20th level of the 100 Refinements Valley. Even Mu Feng had only reached the 17th level of the 100 Refinements Valley. It had to be said that Gu Lingyao and Chao He's performance was already good enough, especially Gu Lingyao. He had reached the 27th heaven in 20 days. If it was in the previous 100 Refinements Valley, such a result would definitely be the focus of everyone's attention. Unfortunately, because of Xiao Chen's existence this time, Gu Lingyao and Chao He were clearly forgotten by everyone. There was no first place in literature and no second place in martial arts. Under Xiao Chen's brilliance, Gu Lingyao and Chao He were clearly overshadowed. No one cared about them because everyone's eyes were locked on Shao Chun. As Shao Chun entered the 31st heaven, someone in the celestial equal sect was the first to call out. Look at starting. He's starting to challenge the 31st heaven. Following this person's voice, everyone's gaze shifted towards the black door. They saw that the light spot representing Shao Chun had already entered the 31st heaven from the 30th heaven. This also meant that Shao Chun had begun to challenge the 31st heaven. The challenge began again. Everyone stared intently at the black door. Although they couldn't see the process of the battle, it didn't stop them from looking forward to the result. While the Tianqi sect was in an uproar because of Shao Chun's performance, Guqi sat in the bamboo courtyard where Guqi lived. He was sipping tea as he cast his gaze towards the back of the mountain. A hint of surprise flickered in his eyes. Could it be that this kid can really pass through the 100 Refinements Valley? If that's the case, then master. Guqi was also shocked by Shao Chun's performance. No one knew the 100 Refinements Valley better than Guqi. Moreover, it could be said that Guqi was the only one who knew the origin of the 100 Refinements Valley because he was the one who brought it back to the Tianqi sect. There was once an elder of the Tianqi sect who guessed that the 100 Refinements Valley was created by Guqi. However, Guqi smiled helplessly. These guys were underestimating the 100 Refinements Valley too much. Not to mention that Guqi was only a half-step saint expert on the surface. Even a saint expert couldn't create a cultivation mystic realm like the 100 Refinements Valley. The 100 Refinements Valley was created by Guqi's master. As for Guqi's master, he was an antique figure in the Tiana continent. Of course, he was already dead now. However, while others didn't know how terrifying his master was, Guqi knew that his master was an almighty quasi-step saint expert, an existence that surpassed the saint stage. It could be said that Guqi's master was the last quasi-step saint in the Tiana continent because after his master broke through to the quasi-step saint realm, the origin power of the Tiana continent was also exhausted. Since then, no one in the entire Tiana continent could break through to the quasi-step saint realm. Such a powerful antique figure had left behind the 100 Refinements Valley before his death. According to the Venerable of the World, his inheritance was hidden in the 100 Refinements Valley, and even Guqi didn't know what this inheritance was. According to his master's instructions, only those who passed through the 36th heaven of the 100 Refinements Valley had a chance to obtain the inheritance. Unfortunately, after so many years, no one could reach the 30th heaven, let alone pass through the 100 Refinements Valley. Shao Chun was the first person to reach the 30th heaven of the 100 Refinements Valley. Guqi looked in the direction of the back mountain with a complicated expression in his eyes. After a long while, he murmured softly, "Little guy, can you really pass through the 100 Refinements Valley? If you can obtain Master's inheritance, it will definitely be an unimaginable fortune for you." He had a trace of expectation for Shao Chun. Of course, Shao Chun naturally didn't know all of this. At this time, Shao Chun was still fighting a tough battle in the 31st heaven. Time passed slowly, and the 1-month deadline for the 100 Refinements Valley was getting closer and closer. There were only 3 days left before the 100 Refinements Valley closed, but more and more people gathered on the back mountain. So many people gathered on the back mountain for no other reason than Shao Chun. At this time, Shao Chun had already reached the 30th heaven. Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw the light spot land on the 35th heaven. However, this time, no one made a sound. Everyone was nervously waiting for the final result. As long as Shao Chun passed through the 35th heaven, there would be hope for him to pass. Many disciples, deacons, and elders of the Tianqi sect stared at the light spot at the top of the black door. At this moment, even if Gu Lingyao, who was ranked second, passed the 30th heaven, no one cared. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Shao Chun's light spot. In the 35th heaven, Shao Chun's injuries were so severe that it was indescribable. Shao Chun clenched his teeth tightly. He didn't have the slightest intention of retreating, because he was just a step away from breaking through to the perfected Tao querying realm. As long as he could pass through the 35th heaven and receive another infusion of spirit power, Xiao Qian would have absolute confidence in breaking through to the perfected Tao querying realm. This was an extremely crucial time. Therefore, no matter what, Xiao Qian had to successfully cross the 35th heaven. As for the final 36th heaven, Xiao Qian didn't care anymore. He was just a step away. He had a breakthrough. As the saying went, a difference of a millimeter could lead to a loss of 1,000 miles. If he didn't grasp this opportunity, he would have to pay 1,000 times or even 10,000 times the time to break through to the perfected Tao querying realm. With the determination to never retreat, Xiao Qian finally passed through the 35th heaven after a series of tough battles. After successfully passing through the 35th heaven, the power of the laws descended once again. At the same time, the mysterious spirit power continuously poured into Xiao Qian's body. With the infusion of the spirit power, Xiao Qian's cultivation didn't have any hindrances. He smoothly broke through the perfected Tao querying realm and entered the perfected Tao querying realm. Chapter 534. He had finally broken through. In less than a month, Xiao Qian had completed 2 breakthroughs in his cultivation. Such progress was absolutely shocking. At the same time, it also reflected the heaven-defying nature of the 100 Refinements Valley. A cultivation mystic realm that could allow a Tao querying realm cultivator to break through 2 small realms in a month was probably the top cultivation mystic realm in the Sage sect. Of course, Xiao Qian did not know that the 100 Refinements Valley was a cultivation mystic realm created by a quasi-sage. Otherwise, a mystic realm created by a sage would naturally not be able to achieve such an effect. Moreover, the Tianhe continent no longer had the power of origin. A quasi-sage had not appeared for thousands of years. There were probably no quasi-sages left in the Tianhe continent now. After all, Gu Qi's master was already dead. His body's condition was terrible, but at this moment, Xiao Qian was extremely happy. He had succeeded. He had finally succeeded in breaking through. At the same time, Xiao Qian felt that this trip to the 100 Refinements Valley had been considered a success. As for the last 36th heaven, Xiao Qian did not intend to challenge it again. It was not wrong to never retreat. However, if one knew that it was impossible and still tried, it would be stupid. Just like now, Xiao Qian's physical condition was obviously not enough to continue challenging the 36th heaven. Although Xiao Qian also wanted to see what would happen after clearing the 100 Refinements Valley and what rewards he would get, Xiao Qian still chose to give up because he really could not take it anymore. He forced his way through the 35th heaven and made another breakthrough in his cultivation. This was already Xiao Qian's limit. With the end of the infusion of spiritual power and the disappearance of the power of laws, Xiao Qian's figure came to the valley. In front of him was also a light door. This was the entrance to the 36th heaven. At the same time, it was also the end of the 100 Refinements Valley. As Xiao Qian left the 35th heaven, in the outside world, at the top of the back mountain, waves of gas could be heard continuously. He had passed. He had really passed. Someone had passed the 35th heaven. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, who would dare to believe that someone could pass the 35th heaven in the 100 Refinements Valley this time? Only the last heaven is left. As long as he passes it, he can pass the 100 Refinements Valley. Although I do not know who that person is, regardless of who he is, I hope that he will be able to pass through the 100 Refinements Valley. Everyone hoped that Xiao Qian could continue to challenge the levels. It would be best if he could clear the 100 Refinements Valley in one go. Just as everyone was thinking this, the light spot that represented Xiao Qian on the black door only paused for about 10 seconds after passing the 35th level before entering the 36th level. This change caused everyone to be stunned. What was going on? Doesn't this person need rest? I just cleared the 35th layer of heaven and entered the 36th layer of heaven without any rest. They were a little shocked, but they could not figure it out. Everyone knew. Even those who had never entered the 100 Refinements Valley had heard of it. In the 100 Refinements Valley, there would be a period of rest after each level was cleared. During this period of time, the challenger could recover. However, Xiao Qian did not stop and directly entered the 36th layer of heaven. This was somewhat puzzling. Of course, The reason why Shao Chun entered the 36th layer of heaven was actually not what everyone thought. After leaving the 35th layer of heaven, Shao Chun originally planned to wait here until the 100 Refinements Valley ended. After all, with his current state, he really did not have the strength to challenge the 36th layer of heaven. However, as soon as this thought appeared in his mind, before Shao Chun could sit down cross-legged, a terrifying suction force suddenly appeared from the light door of the 36th layer of heaven and pulled Shao Chun in without any explanation. Without any strength to resist, he was forcefully pulled into the 36th layer of heaven. Shao Chun's expression immediately changed, and he cursed helplessly. F***CK, is this a trap? Can I choose not to challenge it? There was no choice at all. In the blink of an eye, Shao Chun was pulled into the 36th layer of heaven. The scene in front of him changed. In the end, when Shao Chun came back to his senses, he appeared in a world full of birds and fragrant flowers. It seemed to be the end of a valley. There were towering cliffs on 3 sides. However, the scenery here was quite beautiful. There was a small lake. The grass on the ground was green, and a few ancient trees that were not tall surrounded the small lake. The scenery was very good. Looking around suspiciously, Shao Chun was puzzled. This place that looks like a paradise is the end of the 100 Refinements Valley? This scene is not right. It is completely different from the previous 35th layer of heaven. Obviously, the feeling of the 36th layer of heaven was completely different from what Shao Chun had imagined. Just as Shao Chun was puzzled, an old voice sounded out of nowhere. Finally, someone has come. I can't wait any longer. The voice appeared out of nowhere. Hearing this, Shao Chun looked around vigilantly. Since entering the 100 Refinements Valley, Shao Chun had always been alone. This was also the rule of the 100 Refinements Valley. Now that he suddenly heard this voice, it naturally made Shao Chun vigilant. Just as Shao Chun was searching for the source of the voice, the old voice sounded again. At the same time, a tall and sturdy old man slowly appeared in front of Shao Chun. Kid, you don't have to look for me. I'm here. Looking at the old man in front of him, this old man was very strange. He was clearly just skin and bones, but he gave off an extremely strong feeling. Moreover, the old man's body was a little weak. With a glance, Shao Chun could tell that this old man was just a wisp of soul. No, not a soul, but a saint soul. This was because Shao Chun sensed the power of laws from the old man. After a warrior broke through the saint realm and became a saint, not only did he shed his mortal body, but even his soul would undergo a qualitative change and become a saint soul. A saint soul could exist for a very, very long time. As long as it was properly preserved, theoretically, a saint's soul could exist forever. It would not slowly dissipate with the passage of time like a soul. A saint's soul would not. However, once a saint fell and his physical body died, only his saint's soul remained. This meant that he could no longer use his power at will and could not drift around. He had to use a special method to preserve his saint's soul and let it fall into a deep sleep. Only in this way could he maintain his saint's soul for a long time without dissipating. Otherwise, once his power was exhausted, his saint's soul would also dissipate. The old man in front of him was just a wisp of a saint's soul. Looking at him, Shao Chun took the initiative to ask, "Who are you?" "Haha, kid, you are very direct. My surname is Shu, and my name is Feng. You can call me Elder Shu." In the face of Shao Chun's inquiry, the old man did not hide anything and answered truthfully. Shao Chun naturally did not know Shu Feng. However, if it was Gu Qi or the older saints of the Tiana continent, they would definitely know this person. This was because Shu Feng was recorded as the last quasi-saint of the Tiana continent. At the same time, he was Gu Qi's master. Chapter 535. He did not expect to meet Shu Feng at the last level. However, Shao Chun did not know his identity. He looked at Shu Feng and said, "So, you are the last test to the 100 Refinements Valley?" The 36th level was the last level of the 100 Refinements Valley. Shu Feng revealed a treacherous smile when he heard Shao Chun's words. You can say so. Moreover, as long as you pass the test of the 36th level, you will obtain a heaven-defying opportunity. It can be said to be the final reward of the entire 100 Refinements Valley. It was obvious that Shu Feng was trying to seduce Xiao Chun. However, Xiao Chun was indeed a little tempted when he heard his words. Along the way, Xiao Chun did not doubt the mystery of the 100 Refinements Valley. Just his current cultivation was enough to show how extraordinary the 100 Refinements Valley was. As if he could see that Xiao Chun was a little tempted, Shu Feng continued, Little fellow, I can tell you responsibly that compared to the true reward of the 100 Refinements Valley, the infusion of spiritual energy you experienced earlier is just trash. Compared to the final reward, everything before was just trash. Xiao Chun began to feel conflicted when he heard Shu Feng's words. First of all, his current physical condition was not good. It could even be said that it was very bad. However, he had already reached this step. If he gave up, how could Xiao Chun be willing? He kept thinking in his heart. After a while, Xiao Chun suddenly remembered that Gu Lingyao had briefly introduced the 100 Refinements Valley to him. At that time, the two of them were still in the Moonless Empire. At that time, Gu Lingyao told Xiao Chun that if he entered the 100 Refinements Valley, he had to do his best to reach a higher level. Only then would he be able to obtain more opportunities and rewards. He did not have to worry about his own safety because there was no danger to his life in the 100 Refinements Valley. Once he could not hold on, the rules of the 100 Refinements Valley would automatically judge him as a failure and send him out. There was no danger to his life within the 100 Refinements Valley. When he suddenly recalled the words that Gu Lingyao had once said to him, Xiao Chen's heart calmed down. He quickly made a decision. Since there was no danger to his life, he would naturally give it a try. At the very most, he would fail. The expression in his eyes changed. Seeing this, a smile flashed across Shu Feng's eyes. He looked at Xiao Chun with a smile and said, Boy, it seems like you have made your decision. Elder, just tell me directly. What are the requirements to pass the 36th heaven? Xiao Chun replied. He had already decided to give it his all. Hearing this, Shu Feng pointed to the small lake not far away. Actually, although it was called a small lake, it was more like a pond because its area was indeed too small. Its diameter was not more than 10 meters. Go in first. I will tell you the requirements to pass the 36th heavenly layer later. Shu Feng said. Without doubting Shu Feng's words, Xiao Chun stepped into the pond. It was not deep. However, the moment Xiao Chun entered the pond, a huge suction force appeared and immediately restricted Xiao Chen's movements. The sudden change caused Xiao Chen's expression to change slightly. At this moment, Shu Feng also came to the side of the lake. He still had a smile on his face as he looked at Xiao Chun and said, Boy, this is the test of the 36th heaven. This pond is called the 100 Refinements Blood Pool. It is the most crucial step in cultivating the 100 Refinements Battle Body. What you need to do is to persevere. When you are able to cultivate the first layer of the 100 Refinements Battle Body, you will pass the test of the 100 Refinements Valley. The 100 Refinements Battle Body is the final reward of the 100 Refinements Valley. The 100 Refinements Battle Body was the final reward of the 100 Refinements Valley. Hearing this, Xiao Chun was slightly stunned. Xiao Chun had never heard of the 100 Refinements Battle Body. However, in the Tiana continent, the 100 Refinements Battle Body was recognized as the #1 body refining technique. Shu Feng had also cultivated the 100 Refinements Battle Body, so he was very clear about the strength of the 100 Refinements Battle Body. It could even be said that if it were not for the 100 Refinements Battle Body, Shu Feng would not have become a quasi-saint. On the Tiana continent, many experts thought that the 100 Refinements Battle Body was created by Shu Feng. However, only Shu Feng knew that he could not create such a mysterious body refining technique with his own ability. Shu Feng guessed that the person who created the 100 Refinements Battle Body was at least a great sage or an existence of a higher level. Otherwise, it was impossible to create such a peerless technique like the 100 Refinements Battle Body. Unfortunately, although the 100 Refinements Battle Body was strong, the requirements to cultivate it, or the threshold, were also very high. Shu Feng once planned to pass the 100 Refinements Battle Body to Gu Qi But Gucci could not meet the requirements to cultivate the 100 Refinements battle body at all. Therefore, after Xu Feng's death, the 100 Refinements battle body did not find a suitable successor. Peerless cultivation methods were often not something that could be cultivated just because one wanted to. The threshold was so high that it was enough to shut out 99% of the warriors. It was just like how all warriors wanted to obtain a peerless cultivation method, but at the same time, a peerless cultivation method also hoped to meet a warrior who was worthy of it. If one did not have the ability and forcibly cultivated a peerless technique, there would often only be one result, which was to seek one's own destruction. As Xu Feng's voice fell, before Xiao Chun could say anything, the entire pool underwent a huge change. In just a few breaths, the originally clear pool suddenly turned blood red. It had turned into a pool of blood. At the same time, with the appearance of the pool of blood, Xiao Chun only felt that something was constantly drilling into his body. Gradually, an unbearable pain quickly swept through Xiao Chun's body. He gritted his teeth and looked at Xu Feng, who was beside the pool, in horror. In the face of Xiao Chun's gaze, Xu Feng still smiled and said, "Boy, it is not so easy to cultivate the 100 Refinements battle body successfully. This is also the test that the 100 Refinements Valley said. Now, there are only two paths in front of you. Either you cultivate the first level of the 100 Refinements battle body and obtain the final reward of the 100 Refinements Valley from me, which is the cultivation method of the 100 Refinements battle body, where you can only die in this pool of blood. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you. The previous 35 levels were indeed not life-threatening, but the 36th level is different. You will die. So if you don't want to die, boy, you'd better do your best. You will die." Hearing Xu Feng's words, Xiao Chun instantly had the urge to curse. This old man was simply a fraud. Why didn't he say just now? Why did he have to wait until he had no way out before telling him that the 36th level was a death trap? As his voice fell, Xu Feng no longer cared about Xiao Chun. He hummed a little tune and walked away. Xiao Chun, who was behind, could not help but let out a scream because the pain in his body was getting more and more intense. It was as if his entire body was being torn apart piece by piece. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 536. Xiao Chun wasn't a person who couldn't endure pain, but the pain this time was simply, he didn't know how to describe it. Imagine, his flesh was being torn apart piece by piece. What kind of feeling was that? Xiao Chun couldn't help but scream. Hearing Xiao Chun scream, the smile on Xu Feng's face slowly faded away as she turned around. He knew the pain of practicing the 100 Tempering War God, so he could understand what Xiao Chun was enduring. Back then, when he practiced the 100 Tempering War God, he almost died. As for Gucci, he didn't even enter the blood pool. He only put a finger in, and he couldn't stand it. But now, Xiao Chun's entire body was soaked in the blood pool. Let's hope that this little guy can hold on. Gucci sighed softly as he thought to himself. Then, he left without looking back. Xu Feng had disappeared, but for Xiao Chun, the real hell had only just begun. As the blood continuously flowed into Xiao Chun's body through his pores, Xiao Chun's entire body turned red like burning charcoal. Xiao Chun clenched his teeth so hard that they were about to shatter, but the pain didn't lessen at all. Instead, it became more and more intense. At the same time, a powerful suction force from the blood pool kept pulling Xiao Chun down, as if it wanted to drag him into hell. Xiao Chun struggled fiercely, but unfortunately, it was useless. Soon, Xiao Chun was pulled into the blood pool. At the same time, the blood pool quickly regained its calm. Only 2 bubbles would appear from time to time. Xiao Chun gradually sank into the blood pool. He really wanted to faint. At least that way, he wouldn't have to endure this inhumane torture. However, the desire to live in his heart kept telling Xiao Chun that he couldn't lose consciousness. He couldn't faint. Otherwise, he might never wake up again. In order to survive, he absolutely couldn't faint. He had to hold on. Otherwise, everything would be over. Xiao Chun forcibly held on to the last trace of consciousness. However, in a sober state, the constant pain from his body was really unbearable. Every second felt as long as a century. Since Shu Feng created the 100 Tempering Valley, Shao Chun was the first person to reach the 30th heaven. Therefore, no one in the world knew anything about the 36th heaven. Therefore, Shao Chun could only rely on himself to cross the river. He didn't know how long he had to hold on, but Shao Chun knew very well that he could only hold on. Once he failed, it would mean death. Shao Chun gritted his teeth and held on in the 36th heaven. At the same time, the 1-month deadline of the 100 Tempering Valley was getting closer and closer. Several days later, many disciples, deacons, elders, and even Gu Qi appeared at the peak of the back mountain of the celestial equal sect. It was for no other reason than today was the day the 100 Refinements Valley was closed. It was time for the disciples of the heavenly sect who had entered the 100 Refinements Valley for a month to leave. Everyone looked at the highest light spot. At this time, the light spot had stopped at the 36th heaven for a few days. Many disciples were discussing softly. It's been so many days. Hasn't he passed the 36th heaven? Do you think it's so easy to pass through the 100 Tempering Valley? Just wait and see. The 100 Tempering Valley will be closed in another 15 minutes. At that time, everyone will be teleported out. We will also know who has reached the 36th heaven. Until now, no one knew who had reached the 36th heaven. However, the second light spot had stopped at the 30th heaven. This light spot undoubtedly represented Gu Lingyao. In a month's time, Gu Lingyao had also tried his best to pass through the 30th heaven. However, this was already Gu Lingyao's limit. In the past few days, Gu Lingyao had tried to pass through the 31st heaven several times, but unfortunately, all of them ended in failure. Time passed slowly. A quarter of an hour soon passed. At this time, the tightly shut black iron door slowly opened. Then, the disciples who entered the 100 Tempering Valley were teleported out one by one. Starting from the lower levels, the lower the ranking of the Heaven's Pride disciples, the earlier they would be teleported out. Therefore, no one paid too much attention to those who were teleported out first. Now, everyone's eyes were on the person who had reached the 36th heaven. The Heaven's Pride disciples were teleported out one after another. Soon, Chao He and Gu Lingyao appeared on the scene one after another. Chao He was teleported out before Gu Lingyao. Seeing the two of them, many disciples present were stunned. What's going on? Gu Lingyao and Chao He had been teleported out of the 100 Tempering Valley, but the light spot above the black iron door did not disappear. In other words, the person who had reached the 36th heaven was not Chao He or Gu Lingyao, but someone else. This, not only the disciples, but even some deacons were in disbelief. Most people thought that the person who had reached the 36th heaven must be Gu Lingyao, but now, it was obvious that it was not him. If it's not Senior Chao He or Senior Sister Lingyao, then who could it be? Someone whispered softly. However, facing this question, no one could answer. When Gu Lingyao and Chao He were teleported out, and everyone was waiting for the last person to appear, the black iron door suddenly closed slowly. This change stunned everyone present. The black iron door closed? There's still someone in there. Why did it close directly? Every time the 100 Tempering Valley opened, everyone would be teleported out after a month. But now, there was still one person who hadn't come out, and the black iron door closed by itself. This was something that had never happened before. Everyone was stunned, but soon, someone shouted. Shao Chun. Shao Chun didn't appear. He's the one who reached the 36th heaven. All the prodigy disciples had already left the 100 Refinements Valley. Only Shao Chun had not appeared. As a result, it was certain that the person who was still in the 100 Refinements Valley and had reached the 36th level of heaven was definitely Shao Chun. No one expected that the person that everyone had been guessing was actually Shao Chun. This was indeed shocking. But now, they didn't know if they should be happy or worried because Shao Chun was still in the 100 Tempering Valley and hadn't been teleported out. No one knew what was going on. Gu Lingyao also came to Gu Qi's side and said with a worried look, "Father, Shao Chun, please collect, vote, recommend." Chapter 5:37. The black iron door had already closed, but Shao Chun had yet to come out. At this moment, Gu Lingyao also knew that Shao Chun had actually reached the 36th heaven. However, now was not the time to be happy because no one knew what Shao Chun had encountered in the 36th heaven or if there was any danger. In fact, Gu Lingyao's performance this time was indeed dazzling enough. It was a pity that he had encountered Shao Chun. If not for Shao Chun, Gu Lingyao's result of reaching the 30th heaven was enough to set off a storm in the Tianqi sect. Gu Lingyao did not feel the slightest bit of jealousy because Shao Chun had overshadowed his brilliance. On the contrary, he was very worried about Shao Chun's safety. He did not know why, but after knowing that Shao Chun had not left the 100 Refinements Valley, Gu Lingyao's heart was in a mess. He even had the thought of rushing into the 100 Refinements Valley again. Facing his daughter's question, Gu Qi revealed a strange smile on his face. His daughter probably had some unusual feelings for Shao Chun. Otherwise, why would she be so concerned about Shao Chun? Sensing Gu Qi's smile, Gu Lingyao's face immediately turned red. He lowered his head and did not dare to look at Gu Qi. Seeing this, Gu Qi said slowly, Shao Chun is now at the 36th heaven. He will definitely have his own good fortune. It's useless for us to worry. Arrange for someone to guard here. Gu Qi knew what was in the 36th heaven. However, whether or not he could obtain that peerless opportunity would depend on Shao Chun himself. Gu Qi had no other choice. Hearing Gu Qi's words, Gu Lingyao fell into silence. Since even Gu Qi said that there was no other way, it was obvious that this was the only way. The black door had already closed, but it did not disappear. This was another strange thing. In the past, after the 100 Refinements Valley closed, the black iron door would dissipate. However, it did not this time. Could it be because of Shao Chun? Everyone guessed. The huge black door was still standing at the top of the mountain. Gu Qi didn't explain anything about it. He only arranged for Tian Guochuan to guard the door and inform him immediately if there were any changes. After leaving Tian Guochuan behind, Gu Qi left with Gu Lingyao. As for the others, after waiting for a while, they saw that Shao Chun still had no intention of appearing. Although they were curious, they chose to leave one after another. Unaware that the 100 Refinements Valley had closed, Shao Chun continued to grit his teeth and endure in the blood pool. He had no idea how much time had passed. Shao Chun felt as though he had been in the blood pool for centuries. Every second was unbearable. As Shao Chun stubbornly persisted, Xu Feng, who had disappeared for several days, reappeared at the edge of the blood pool. Xu Feng revealed a hint of surprise as he looked at the calm blood pool. It's already been 4 days. Can this little guy really succeed? Shao Chun's performance surprised Xu Feng. At the same time, there was also a hint of excitement. Xu Feng's greatest wish was to pass down the 100 Refinements battle body. Unfortunately, there were too few people who met the cultivation requirements of the 100 Refinements battle body. Xu Feng hadn't found anyone until his death. He was very clear about the terror of the 100 Refinements battle body. Xu Feng was able to become a quasi-saint by relying on the 100 Refinements battle body. Moreover, Xu Feng hadn't succeeded in cultivating the 100 Refinements battle body. He could only be considered to have cultivated half of it. Even so, Xu Feng still relied on it to reach the quasi-saint realm. It was hard to imagine what it would be like to cultivate the 100 Refinements battle body to the perfection realm. Therefore, Xu Feng sincerely hoped that Shao Chun could succeed. Otherwise, a peerless technique like the 100 Refinements battle body would disappear from the world. Xu Feng stared blankly at the blood pool. After a while, he left again. For days wasn't enough. Shao Chun still had to persist. Otherwise, the result would still be death. Unaware of Xu Feng's appearance, Shao Chun didn't have the mind to care about other things at this time. All of his attention was focused on resisting the erosion of the sharp pain. After 4 whole days, the sharp pain didn't lessen at all. On the contrary, it became more and more unbearable. However, under such sharp pain, Shao Chun also discovered that his physical body was undergoing some kind of transformation, especially his skin. It seemed to be being transformed and constantly tempered. What Xiao Qian didn't know was that under this continuous tempering, Xiao Qin's skin was indeed undergoing some kind of transformation. Once this transformation was completed, it was equivalent to Xiao Qian successfully cultivating the first layer of the 100 Refinements battle body, the Golden Armor Realm. Of course, this was only the entry level. Xiao Qian didn't know all this. After all, Xu Feng didn't explain anything to him. He just told him to persist, otherwise he would die. Therefore, Xiao Qian could only grit his teeth and persist. Damn it, when will this pain stop? Xiao Qian cursed in his heart. In the beginning, facing such sharp pain, Xiao Qian would still struggle for a while. However, he didn't even have the strength to struggle now. He could only endure all of this silently. Only Xiao Qian was left in the entire 100 Refinements Valley. In the paradise of the 36th heaven, Xiao Qian silently endured the inhuman torture. Time passed day by day. After 7 days, Xu Feng appeared at the side of the blood pool again. This time, Xu Feng actually revealed a smile on his face. Looking at the blood pool that had faded a lot, Xu Feng chuckled and said, "This kid is indeed not an ordinary person. He actually succeeded." Persisting in the blood pool for 7 days meant that Xiao Qian had succeeded. Now, Xiao Qian had already entered the entry level of the first layer of the 100 Refinements battle body, the Golden Armor Realm. When Xu Feng first began to cultivate the 100 Refinements battle body, he also persisted for 7 days. Now, Xiao Qian had done it. It could be said that Xiao Qian had succeeded. Even if he was unconscious now, his life would no longer be in danger. However, Xiao Qian didn't know about this. He still gritted his teeth and persisted. However, after 7 days, Xiao Qian also discovered that the pain didn't seem to be so intense anymore. He didn't know if the power of the blood pool had weakened or if he had already adapted to this kind of pain. Xiao Qian naturally didn't know that he had already entered the entry level of the first layer of the 100 Refinements battle body, the Golden Armor Realm. On the shore, Xu Feng didn't have any intention of reminding Xiao Qian. Since he had persisted for 7 days, Xu Feng also wanted to see how long this kid could persist. If he could persist until the energy in the blood pool was completely absorbed, it would definitely be of great benefit to Xiao Qian's future cultivation. In this way, Xiao Qian might really be able to cultivate the 100 Refinements battle body to the perfection realm. Kid, don't disappoint this old man. This old man hasn't been able to successfully cultivate the 100 Refinements battle body in my life. If you can succeed, this old man's wish will be fulfilled. Xu Feng looked at the depths of the blood pool, where a figure vaguely appeared, and muttered softly, "Let me tell everyone something. Due to some matters at home, I need to return to my hometown for 6 days. Therefore, from today until the 21st, there will be adjustments to the update. From 4 updates a day to 3 updates a day. After the 21st, it will return to normal. Of course, I will make up for the 6 days that I owe you." Chapter 538. He looked at Xiao Qian with a smile on his face. As time passed, the blood in the blood pool became thinner and thinner. At this time, Xiao Qian could be clearly seen on the shore. For 3 days in a row, Xu Feng did not leave the side of the blood pool. Seeing that Xiao Qian had no intention of leaving, Xu Feng could no longer remain calm. 10 days, it had been 10 days. Xiao Qian had stayed in the blood pool for 10 days. He was full of joy. After waiting for so many years, the most suitable person for the tempered battle body had finally appeared. There was no doubt that the tempered battle body would be much stronger in the hands of Xiao Qian than in the hands of Xu Feng. This was because Xu Feng had not been able to cultivate the tempered battle body completely, but Xiao Qian might succeed. Xu Feng was very excited when he thought that Xiao Qian would cultivate the tempered battle body to perfection one day. It was hard to imagine what kind of power Xiao Qian would have when that time came. Another 2 days passed. Xu Feng was still waiting on the shore without disturbing Xiao Qian. He had been in the blood pool for 12 days, and the energy in the blood pool was almost completely absorbed by Xiao Qian. On this day, Xiao Qian soared into the sky from the blood pool. His body exuded a rich golden light, as if a layer of golden armor had wrapped around Xiao Qian's body. At the same time, a faint golden halo appeared behind Xiao Qian. illuminating Shao Chun like a Buddha. It was hard to look at him directly. A golden sun. That's right. At this moment, Shao Chun was like a golden sun, exuding a chilling aura. After about 100 breaths, the golden light on Shao Chen's body slowly receded and then slowly fell. However, at this time, the clothes on Shao Chen's body had clearly disappeared long ago. Shao Chun did not pay attention to the excited Shu Feng at the side. He minded his own business and went to put on a set of clothes, then turned to look at Shu Feng. "Old man, you almost got me killed this time." Shao Chen's words were filled with resentment. However, Shu Feng was a saint after all, so what could he do even if he was filled with resentment? He could only grumble. In any case, he would definitely not be able to defeat Shu Feng. Even though he was only left with a wisp of saint soul, he could definitely suppress him easily. Naturally, Shu Feng could feel the resentment in Shao Chen's heart. However, he didn't care and laughed loudly. "Haha, boy, you still blame this old man. If it wasn't for this old man, how could you have such a great fortune? How is it? Is there any difference between this body and the previous one?" Shu Feng didn't care about Shao Chen's complaints at all. After hearing his words, Shao Chen didn't care anymore. He nodded and said truthfully, "It's a world of difference." Indeed, although he had fallen into Shu Feng's trap and suffered for more than 10 days, the benefits were obviously not small. It could even be said that it was immeasurable. In just 12 days, Shao Chen's body had undergone earth-shaking changes. Compared with his previous body, it wasn't an exaggeration to say that it was a world of difference. Shao Chen's heart was filled with excitement. Although he had suffered a lot, the harvest was also unimaginable. As Shu Feng said, compared with the tempered battle body, the previous rewards were simply trash. This sentence wasn't an exaggeration at all. Seeing that Shao Chen was also somewhat unable to contain the excitement in his heart, Shu Feng smiled and said, "That's why you're still full of resentment. Do you know how many people in the Tiana continent want to obtain the tempered battle body? Even those saints would go crazy for it. Old man, this tempered battle body is indeed unimaginably strong. I wonder what level of body refining cultivation technique it is." Shao Chen had no doubt about the strength of the tempered battle body because he had personally experienced it. In the face of Shao Chen's inquiry, Shu Feng didn't hide anything about the tempered battle body at this time. There was a touch of pride on his face as he said, "According to this old man's guess, the level of this tempered battle body has already surpassed the saint level." Surpassed the saint level? Hearing this, Shao Chen's face changed slightly. After the heaven level was the saint level, and a saint level martial skill was absolutely in existence that could destroy heaven and earth. In an entire Tiana continent, the number of saint level martial skills could be counted on one hand. Moreover, only the powerful sage sects that truly dominated the Tiana continent could possess such saint-level martial skills. A sage sect like Tian Feng Shengzong, which only had one saint, definitely didn't have any saint-level martial skills. Shao Chun was surprised by the terror of the tempered battle body, but soon reacted. Listening to Shu Feng's words, he wasn't sure about the exact level of the tempered battle body. For a moment, Shao Chun was a little puzzled. Wasn't the tempered battle body created by this old man in front of him? As if seeing the doubts in Shao Chen's heart, Shu Feng took the initiative to explain before Shao Chun could open his mouth. "Brat, you guessed right. This 100 tempering battle body was indeed not created by me. Although I was a quasi-saint when I was alive, unfortunately, even a quasi-saint would not be able to create such a peerless technique like the 100 tempering battle body. Moreover, this old man can also tell you that this old man has only cultivated half of the tempered battle body in my entire life, and I didn't really succeed in cultivating it. But even so, this old man still relied on the tempered battle body to become a quasi-sage. Moreover, in this old man's era, I was recognized as the strongest person in the Tiana continent. Even other quasi-sages of the same realm were no match for this old man in terms of physical strength. So, don't underestimate this tempered battle body. Its power is beyond your imagination. Of course, the premise is that you can successfully cultivate it. Haha. Well, since you have passed the test, this old man will impart the tempered battle body to you. Because Shao Chun had successfully cultivated the first layer of the tempered battle body, the golden armor realm, Shu Feng didn't hide anything about the tempered battle body. As soon as his voice fell, Shu Feng bent his finger, and a ray of light instantly entered Shao Chen's forehead. A huge amount of information was also imprinted in Shao Chen's mind. What Shu Feng imparted to Shao Chun was the cultivation method of the tempered battle body. As this information was imprinted in Shao Chen's mind, Shao Chun finally truly experienced the terror of the tempered battle body. The tempered battle body was divided into the golden armor realm, the jade organs realm, the heavenly body realm, and the indestructible realm. Shao Chun was only at the beginning of the golden armor realm. It could be said that he had only just stepped through the threshold of the tempered battle body. This was already enough for Shao Chun to suffer. It was truly difficult to imagine just how much pain and resources he would have to endure if he wanted to reach the indestructible realm. It was no wonder that even Shu Feng had only reached the jade organs realm in his entire life. Shao Chun looked a little dazed, and it took him a while to come back to his senses. Seeing this, Shu Feng naturally knew what Shao Chun was thinking. When he first got the temper battle body, he was also like this, and he was even more shocked than Shao Chun. Shu Feng smiled. "Kid, now you know how terrifying the tempered battle body is. All right, I've already given you the tempered battle body. However, this old man still has a fortune to give you. As for whether you can grasp it or not, that will depend on your own ability. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 539. Previously, Shao Chun had only just touched the threshold of the 100 tempered battle body. Now, after Shu Feng taught Shao Chun the entire 100 tempered battle body, Shao Chun truly understood the horror and mystery of the 100 tempered battle body. The 100 tempered battle body was indeed worthy of being called a peerless cultivation technique. Shao Chun also believed that Shu Feng was not talking nonsense just now. The 100 tempered battle body was at least an existence that surpassed a saint-level cultivation technique, or even higher. Not to mention anything else. After the 100 tempered battle body was cultivated to the extreme, which was the 4th level of the indestructible realm, it was known as the indestructible physical body. One could imagine how strong it was. After a long while, Shao Chun recovered from the shock. At this time, when he heard that Shu Feng was going to give him a great opportunity, Shao Chen's eyes flashed with excitement. Noticing the change in Shao Chen's expression, Shu Feng laughed and scolded. "You little guy, don't think too much. The opportunity that this old man will give you next is naturally far inferior to the 100 tempered battle body, but it is still extremely useful for you now. The greatest opportunity in the 100 tempered valley, the 100 tempered battle body, had already been obtained by Shao Chun. What Shu Feng was going to give Shao Chun next was just a drizzle compared to the 100 tempered battle body." Hearing Shu Feng's words, Shao Chen's face did not show any disappointment. Thinking about it, there was probably no opportunity better than the 100 tempered battle body in the entire Tiana continent. The harvest of this trip to the 100 tempered valley was far beyond Shao Chen's expectations. As soon as his voice fell, Shu Feng formed a seal with both hands. Immediately, a talisman array of only 10 square meters appeared in front of Shao Chun. After the talisman array appeared, Shu Feng said with a smile, "This array is called the Path Array, and it is a saint-level talisman array. However, this array is a one-time use talisman array. The energy in it can only last for 5 days. If you cultivate in this array with your current cultivation, there is hope that you can break through to the Tao validation realm. However, whether you can succeed or not still depends on your own ability." The Tao Travel Array was a special array formation for its master to break through to the Tao Confirmation realm. Many great forces of the Heavenly River continent had once drawn it. However, the biggest problem with this formation was that it could only be used once. To put it simply, this formation was different from teleportation formations that could be used repeatedly. Once it was inscribed, it could only be used once before it would collapse. Because of this characteristic, the cost of inscribing a formation was very high. This was because a huge amount of resources had been invested, and after inscribing it, it could only be used by one person. Because the Taoist formation consumed a lot of energy and was a one-time use talisman array, many major forces on the Tiana continent also directed them to be used on their top disciples. Even the sage sects were the same. After all, the cost was too high. Even the sage sects couldn't afford it. This Tao travel array was the last good fortune that Xu Feng had given to Xiao Chen. Compared to the tempered battle body, this Tao travel array was nothing. It was trash. However, if he could use it to break through to the Tao validation realm, it would be a huge opportunity for Xiao Chen. Or perhaps it should be said that if he didn't have the tempered battle body, this Tao travel array would be Xiao Chen's greatest harvest in the 100 Refinements Valley. Unfortunately, something as precious as the Tao travel array was nothing in front of the tempered battle god. After briefly explaining the Tao travel array to Xiao Chen, Xu Feng's figure began to fade away. Seeing this, Xiao Chen called out, "Senior. Ha, boy, this old man is just a remnant soul. Now that the tempered battle body has been inherited, it's time for me to leave. Cultivate well. Once the power of the Tao travel array is exhausted, no matter what the result is, you will be safely sent out of the 100 Refinements Valley." The tempered battle physique had finally found a successor. As such, Xu Feng naturally lost the meaning of staying. At the same time, with Xiao Chen obtaining the tempered battle physique, the 100 Refinements Valley would become an ordinary cultivation secret realm. There would no longer be an opportunity like Xiao Chen this time. There would only be an ordinary infusion of spirit qi left. Xu Feng laughed heartily. As soon as his laughter fell, he disappeared in front of Xiao Chen. Xu Feng was gone, and the last remnant of his soul dissipated between heaven and earth. Xiao Chen bowed in Xu Feng's direction. He didn't say anything. This time, he had obtained a great opportunity from Xu Feng, but Xiao Chen couldn't help him. He could only hope that he would have a safe journey. After calming his mind, Xiao Chen roughly studied the cultivation method of the tempered battle body. Soon, he felt helpless. The amount of resources needed to cultivate the tempered battle body was simply astronomical. Xiao Chen had already set foot in the golden armor realm, but the gap between him and the jade internal organs realm was shocking. Therefore, it was probably impossible to improve the tempered battle body in a short time. For the time being, it was impossible to improve the tempered battle body. Xiao Chen slowly walked into the Tao travel array and sat down cross-legged. As soon as Xiao Chen sat down, the Tao travel array was activated. A golden light soared into the sky, enveloping Xiao Chen's body. At the same time as Xiao Chen entered the Tao travel array, Gu Lingyao was also sitting cross-legged in a Tao travel array in Gu Qi's residence. If Xiao Chen was here, he would definitely recognize that this was a Tao travel array. Gu Qi had also carved a Tao travel array for Gu Lingyao to help him break through to the Tao validation realm. Of course, Gu Qi had spent a lot to carve this Tao travel array. Therefore, with the strength of Tianqi sect, it was only enough to carve this Tao travel array. Obviously, Chao didn't have this opportunity. Xiao Chen and Gu Lingyao were both relying on the help of the Tao travel array to break through to the Tao validation realm, making the final preparations for the upcoming Sage Sect selection. However, Gu Lingyao's Tao travel array was given by Gu Qi, while Xiao Chen's Tao travel array was given by Xu Feng. Time passed day by day, and the day of the Sage Sect selection drew closer and closer. Xiao Chen did not know how long he had been cultivating in the Wei formation. On this day, the aura on Xiao Chen's body finally changed, and the barrier of the Wei proving realm in his body was broken. Breakthrough. His cultivation had finally broken through. From the Tao querying realm, he had broken through to the Tao validation realm. The Tao validation realm was a whole new realm. Without a doubt, the breakthrough of a major realm caused Xiao Chen's strength to change dramatically. His aura rose steadily. Finally, after a full quarter of an hour, Xiao Chen's aura slowly stabilized at the Tao validation realm. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly to reveal a smile. This trip to the 100 Refinements Valley was simply unexpected. Not only did his cultivation level rise from the Tao querying realm all the way to the Tao validation realm, but he also obtained a peerless body tempering cultivation technique, the 100 Refinements Battle Body. It could be said that this trip to the Valley of 100 Refinements was worth more than a decade of Xiao Chen's hard work, and this was not even taking into account the 100 Refinements Battle Body. Otherwise, he really did not know how to evaluate this trip to the Valley of 100 Refinements. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 540. It could be said that Xiao Chen had earned a lot from this trip to the 100 Refinements Valley. His strength had undergone an earth-shattering change. He slowly opened his eyes with a faint smile on his lips. This trip is really worth it. Just as Xiao Chen's cultivation base broke through, the Taoist formation also slowly disappeared. Just as Xu Feng had said, this Taoist formation was a one-time use talisman formation. It would automatically disappear after being used. The power of the Taoist formation was exhausted, but Xiao Chen's cultivation base had also successfully broken through. At this moment, a powerful repulsive force enveloped Xiao Chen. Obviously, the power of law and the 100 Refinements Valley wanted to forcefully send Xiao Chen out. In more than a month, Xiao Chen had obtained unexpected benefits in the 100 Refinements Valley. Before leaving, Xiao Chen bowed to the front and said, "Senior Xu Feng, Junior Xiao Chen is leaving." "Senior, don't worry. The 100 Refinements Battle Body is in Junior's hands. I will definitely not disgrace it." Following Xiao Chen's words, his body slowly disappeared as he was sent out by the power of law in the 100 Refinements Valley. Just as Xiao Chen was about to leave the 100 Refinements Valley, a total of 60 supreme disciples of the Tianqi sect had already gathered in the Tianqi sect's sect master's square. At the same time, Chao He and Gu Lingyao stood at the front while Gu Qi and the elders of the Tianqi sect appeared one after another. However, Gu Qi had an anxious look on his face. Today was already the day to rush to the Glory Sect selection, but Xiao Chen still had not come out of the 100 Refinements Valley. This made Gu Qi a little anxious. What's going on with this kid? Could something have happened to him? Gu Qi thought to himself. There was no time to wait. If they did not set off today, the Tianqi sect would not be able to make it in time for the Glory Sect selection. Seeing Gu Qi's ugly expression, Great Elder Tian Guochuan said helplessly, "Sect Master, I'm afraid there's no time to wait. If we wait any longer, we won't be able to make it in time." Because they were leaving for the Glory Sect selection today, Tian Guochuan did not continue to wait at the back of the mountain. Hearing Tian Guochuan's words, Gu Qi nodded his head with an ugly expression. Indeed, they could not wait any longer. He was about to give the order to set off. Seeing this, Gu Lingyao below, after going through the 100 Refinements Valley and the Tao Travel Array, Gu Lingyao successfully broke through to the Tao Validation Realm. As for Chao He, she was still at the lesser perfection Tao Querying Realm. This was the difference in cultivation resources. Logically speaking, Chao He was also a king of pride. Even if her talent was not as good as Gu Lingyao's, the difference should not be too great. But now, due to the difference in cultivation resources, Chao He was left behind by Gu Lingyao. This was the foundation of a large sect, and this was the terrifying aspect of cultivation resources. However, when a large sect decided to give the majority of its cultivation resources to a single disciple, that disciple's rate of improvement would be unimaginable. In a short period of time, it was completely possible for a qualitative improvement to occur, just like Gu Lingyao. With the help of Gu Qi's Tianqi sect's cultivation resources, Gu Lingyao broke through to the Tao validation realm and widened the gap between him and Chao He. Therefore, even if one was a king of pride and had a talent that others looked up to, without cultivation resources, one could only watch helplessly as the gap between them widened. In fact, Gu Qi naturally wanted to nurture Chao He, but unfortunately, Tianqi sect's strength was not enough for both Gu Lingyao and Chao He to break through to the Tao validation realm at the same time. Therefore, he had to give up on one of them and focus on nurturing the other. Between Gu Lingyao and Chao He, Gu Qi naturally chose Gu Lingyao without hesitation. Of course, it was not only Tianqi sect that was like this. All the other large sects in Tianfeng Prefecture were the same. In the final sprint before the Glory sect selection, all the large sects could only choose to take out all their cultivation resources and pour them heavily on one disciple. Only then could that disciple lead the others to achieve good results during the Glory sect selection. Even though his cultivation base and combat strength had increased tremendously, Gu Lingyao did not have the slightest bit of joy on his face. Instead, he was filled with worry as he cursed in his heart. "Stupid Xiao Chun, what's wrong with you? If you don't come now, you won't be able to make it." Gu Lingyao was worried about Xiao Chun. After all, they were about to set off. If Xiao Chun did not make it, he would miss the Glory sect selection. Gu Lingyao was worried, but there was nothing he could do. Seeing that Xiao Chun still did not appear, Gu Qi helplessly took a deep breath and shouted, "I hope you can achieve good results for our Tianqi sect in this Glory sect selection. All right, let's go." As soon as Gu Qi finished speaking, the teleportation formation on the main square lit up with a beam of light that shot into the sky. Then, under the lead of Tian Guichuan and the other two Dao Emperor Realm elders, the disciples participating in the Glory sect selection walked into the teleportation formation and disappeared. They could not wait any longer. But before they left, Gu Lingyao and Mu Feng both looked towards the back mountain of Tianqi sect. Unfortunately, even at the last moment, Xiao Chun still did not make it. Soon, everyone disappeared through the teleportation formation. Then, the teleportation formation closed. Gu Qi sighed and said helplessly, "Still didn't make it." Gu Qi was naturally talking about Xiao Chun. In the end, he still did not make it. But at this moment, an elder beside Gu Qi cried out in surprise. "Sectmaster, look! The back mountain, the back mountain!" The elder suddenly cried out in surprise. Hearing this, Gu Qi also looked towards the back mountain. The black door that was originally towering in the sky was actually starting to disappear slowly. When the black door disappeared, Gu Qi immediately disappeared from the spot and rushed towards the back mountain. With Gu Qi's speed, he arrived at the back mountain in an instant. At this moment, the black door had already disappeared, and on the peak of the back mountain, Xiao Chun in white appeared before Gu Qi's eyes. He was finally out, but after sensing that Xiao Chen's cultivation had also broken through to the Dao validation realm, Gu Qi was stunned at first. But soon, he revealed a smile and said, "Seems like this kid has also gotten a lot of benefits. I wonder if he got the tempered battle body. If he did, this kid would probably soar to the sky." Gu Qi was very happy with Xiao Chen's appearance because with Xiao Chen around, Tianqi sect would have a greater chance of winning the Glory sect selection this time. Taking a step forward, he instantly appeared in front of Xiao Chun. Upon seeing Gu Qi, Xiao Chun bowed and called out, "Sectmaster, you're finally willing to come out, little guy? Cut the crap and follow me. The others have already rushed to the Glory sect selection. You should go too, or you won't make it in time." Gu Qi had a lot of questions to ask Xiao Chun, but time was of the essence. Moreover, Gu Qi did not intend to delve into the matter of the tempered battle body. Therefore, as soon as they met, Gu Qi brought Xiao Chun to the main square without any explanation, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 541. Gu Qi did not ask Xiao Chun anything about the 100 Refinements Valley. Although Gu Qi knew what was in the 36th heaven of the 100 Refinements Valley, he also knew very well that with his conditions, it was impossible for him to cultivate the 100 Refinements battle body, even if he had now broken through to the Saint Realm. Therefore, it made no difference to Gu Qi whether he asked or not. Now that the Sage sect selection had begun, the others had already left. Xiao Chen naturally had to catch up as soon as possible. If he missed the time, he would not be able to participate in the Sage sect selection this time. Gu Qi brought Xiao Chun directly to the main square. In just a few breaths' time, Gu Qi returned with Xiao Chun following behind him. The few elders who were still in the main square had a change in expression. Sect Master, Xiao Chun. No one expected Xiao Chun to appear at this juncture. Tian Guichuan and the others had already left with a large group. Without wasting any time, Guqi immediately shouted, "Activate the teleportation formation and send Xiao Chun to the Tianfeng Prefecture city. Zhang Tong, you are responsible for protecting Xiao Chun all the way to the Tianfeng Prefecture city." Once again, Guqi activated the teleportation formation and sent another elder to protect Xiao Chun all the way to the Tianfeng Prefecture city. Hearing Guqi's words, the elder called Zhang Tong responded respectfully. The teleportation portal was soon activated again. Xiao Chun entered the portal under the protection of Zhang Tong. Before he left, Guqi seemed to have guessed what Xiao Chun was thinking, so he said, "Don't worry about it. Time is of the essence. Chat with Elder Zhang as you walk. Elder Zhang will tell you the rules of the sage sex selection on the way." Xiao Chun knew nothing about the rules of the sage sex selection. However, after hearing Guqi's words, Xiao Chun still nodded slightly. The distance from the Celestial Equals sect to the Tianfeng Prefecture city was very far. Along the way, one would have to switch between teleportation formations several times. If one were to rely on manpower, even a Dao Emperor would need half a month. This showed how far the distance between the two places was. Under Zhang Tong's protection, there was nothing to worry about. At the same time, Zhang Tong had also informed Xiao Chun of the rules of the Glory Sect selection. Firstly, the location of the Glory Sect selection was in Tianfeng Prefecture City. Just from the name itself, one would know that this was the center of Tianfeng Prefecture. It was also the largest and most prosperous city in Tianfeng Prefecture, directly under Tianfeng Shengzong. Furthermore, Tianfeng Shengzong's mountain gate was built on Tianfeng Sacred Mountain not far from Tianfeng Prefecture City. Every time the Glory Sect selection started, all the major forces within the Tianfeng Prefecture would send out their disciples. Of course, there was a limit to the number of disciples that each force could send out. For example, Tianqi Sect had 70 spots. However, with Tianqi Sect as an example, out of the 70 spots, only 10 of them were qualified to participate in the Sage Sect selection. As for the other 60 spots, they were called vassals. The simplest explanation for being vassals was that they would not participate in the Sage Sect selection. Furthermore, Tianfeng Shengzong would not care about their performance in the Sage Sect selection. The reason why these vassals would participate in the Sage Sect selection was to help the 10 participants enter Tianfeng Shengzong successfully and achieve good results in the Sage Sect selection. This was also the rule set by Tianfeng Shengzong. As for why this was the case, it was because of the location of the Sage Sect selection, the Dark Prison Secret Realm. Every time the Sage Sect selection was held in the Dark Prison Secret Realm, the Dark Prison Secret Realm was a place that Tianfeng Shengzong specially used to imprison criminals. It was a small, independent world. For example, some martial artists who had committed heinous crimes, or some demonic beasts, as long as they were captured by Tianfeng Shengzong would imprison them in the Dark Prison Secret Realm. These criminals who were imprisoned in the Dark Prison Secret Realm naturally became the test mission for Xiao Chun and the others. According to the rules of the Sage Sect selection, after entering the Dark Prison Secret Realm, each participant could use any method to kill the criminals in the Dark Prison Secret Realm. Every time they killed a criminal, they would be able to obtain a certain amount of points. If a vassal killed a criminal, they could voluntarily hand over the points to any participant. As such, at the end of the Sage Sect selection, the person with the highest points would naturally be able to enter Tianfeng Shengzong and could even become a core disciple directly. According to the different cultivation realms, the points obtained after each criminal was killed would be different. Of course, one could also choose to steal the points from other forces. Don't think that the criminals locked up in the Dark Prison Secret Realm were simple. One had to know that to be locked up in the Dark Prison Secret Realm meant that one had committed heinous crimes. None of the criminals in the Dark Prison Secret Realm were easy missions. At the same time, there are also those with high cultivation realms. Of course, in order to ensure the unity of the Sage Sect selection, martial artists of Dao King Realm and above were all locked up separately. In other words, during the selection period, the highest they would meet would only be Dao Transformation Realm martial artists. But this was already very ridiculous. Perhaps it was because of this reason that Tianfeng Shangzong created some vassals, giving more spots to the various forces. After all, if the number of vassals was too small, then participants like Xiao Chun who had entered the Dark Prison secret realm would have a hard time surviving. Secondly, the reason for increasing the number of vassals was to test the participants' commanding abilities. After all, a disciple of Tianfeng Shangzong not only had to be strong, but also couldn't be weak in other aspects. This sage sect selection was to test one's cohesiveness, commanding ability, judgment, and so on. Therefore, whether or not one could command these vassals to achieve good results was also a test for the participants. After all, in the environment of the Dark Prison secret realm, it was impossible to rely on one person. This was because the cultivation realms of the criminals were all higher than the participants. Therefore, if one wanted to kill them, they could only rely on teamwork. Of course, the true monsters were not included in this list. After explaining the sage sect selection to Xiao Chun in detail, Xiao Chun and Zhang Tong successfully arrived at Tianfeng Prefecture City a day later. Stepping out of the transportation portal of Tianfeng Prefecture City, Xiao Chun's eyes were filled with awe as he looked at the largest city in the entire Tianfeng Prefecture City. Although he could only see the corner of Tianfeng Prefecture City's close, Xiao Chun could only use one word to describe such a city: magnificent. That's right, Tianfeng Prefecture City gave off the feeling of magnificence. Compared to Tianfeng Prefecture City, Wuyue Empire's capital city and Tianling Empire's capital city were like small villages deep in the mountains. Tianfeng Prefecture City was so huge that it was impossible to describe it properly. Let's put it this way. Xiao Chun and Zhang Tong were currently at the west side of Tianfeng Prefecture City. However, if they wanted to head to the east side, even if they were to fly, with Xiao Chun's speed, it would still take them at least a day. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 542. Because the Tianfeng Prefecture City was too big, short-distance teleportation formations could be seen everywhere in the Tianfeng Prefecture City. These short-distance teleportation arrays only had one purpose, and that was to teleport within the Tianfeng Prefecture. Because these teleportation arrays had a short teleportation distance, they did not consume many spirit stones. Therefore, they were basically never shut down. Moreover, the cost of using these teleportation arrays was not too expensive. Ordinary warriors could afford them. After witnessing the grandeur of the Tianfeng Prefecture City, Zhang Tong led the two of them to a small courtyard of the Celestial Equal Sect in the Tianfeng Prefecture City through the short-distance teleportation formations in the city. This was the first time Xiao Chun had seen a city that could use teleportation formations to build an entire transportation system within the city. These short-distance teleportation formations were completely connected to the Tianfeng Prefecture City. While he was still in shock, Zhang Tong had already knocked on the courtyard door. This courtyard had already been bought by the Tianqi sect. As one of the major sects within the Tianfeng Prefecture City, the Tianqi sect naturally had their own property in the Tianfeng Prefecture City. Not only the Tianqi sect, but other sects like the Qingyang sect also had their own property. Even the Wuyue Empire had one. As Zhang Tong gently knocked on the courtyard door, it was quickly opened. An elder of the Tianqi sect stood in front of the door. Seeing that it was Zhang Tong and Xiao Chun, his face lit up with joy. Elder Zhang and Xiao Chun, you've come out of the 100 Refinements Valley? Obviously, this elder was surprised to see Xiao Chun here. Hearing this, Zhang Tong smiled and said, I'm under the orders of the sect master to bring Xiao Chun to the Tianfeng Prefecture City. After this, I'll stay in the Tianfeng Prefecture City with you guys and wait for the sacred sect election to end. That's great, that's great. Coming quickly. Hearing Zhang Tong's words, the elder nodded with a smile on his face. Then, he turned sideways and invited Xiao Chun and Zhang Tong into the courtyard. The courtyard was not big, but it was not small either. There was no problem for hundreds of people to stay here. He brought Xiao Chun all the way to the main courtyard. At this moment, Gu Lingyao and the other 69 prodigious disciples were sitting in a circle in the main courtyard. Tian Guochuan was explaining something to everyone. First Elder, Zhang Tong has brought Xiao Chun here. Oh, is Xiao Chun here? Okay. Hearing that Xiao Chun was here, Tian Guochuan smiled and looked at Xiao Chun, who was walking behind him. Xiao Chun's appearance naturally made Tian Guochuan happy. When Xiao Chun arrived in front of him, Tian Guochuan said with a smile, "You come at the right time. Find a place to sit under the table." I'm telling them what they need to pay attention to in the Glory Sect selection. Listen carefully, it's very useful. The Glory Sect selection was about to begin in 3 days. Tian Guochuan naturally needed to inform everyone about the things they needed to pay attention to so that they wouldn't participate in the Glory Sect selection without knowing anything. Upon hearing Tian Guochuan's words, Xiao Chun nodded slightly and then found a place to sit cross-legged among the crowd. While Xiao Chun was talking to Tian Guochuan, all the genius disciples were secretly sizing up Xiao Chun. After this trip to the 100 Refinements Valley, everyone suddenly realized that they couldn't see through Xiao Chun at all. In fact, they couldn't even sense Xiao Chun's cultivation state. Could it be that this fella is also... Even Xiao, he couldn't see through Xiao Chun's cultivation state. A complicated look flashed through her eyes. Xiao naturally knew that she couldn't see through Xiao Chun's cultivation state. In her heart, she guessed that Xiao Chun had also broken through to the Dao validation realm like Gu Lingyao. There were a total of 3 genius kings in the celestial equal sect. But now that Gu Lingyao had broken through to the Dao validation realm, and Xiao Chun was suspected to have broken through to the Dao validation realm as well. If not, with Xiao He's cultivation state, there was no way she couldn't sense Xiao Chun's cultivation state. Her heart was filled with bitterness. In the blink of an eye, the gap between Gu Lingyao and Xiao Chun had widened. Now, in front of Xiao Chun and Gu Lingyao, Xiao He probably couldn't even last 10 moves. Of course, even if he did, Xiao Chun wouldn't have thought too much about it. The path of cultivation was like sailing against the current. If you didn't advance, you would fall behind. Xiao He didn't grab hold of the opportunity, and the gap between him and Gu Lingyao widened. Who else could she blame? Sitting down cross-legged, Xiao Chun didn't care about the gazes of the surrounding disciples. He looked at Tian Guochuan and listened attentively to his explanation of the Glory Sect selection. At the start, it was all unimportant stuff. It was nothing more than the threats in the darkness prison's secret realm. After about an hour, Tian Guochuan finally finished explaining the situation in the darkness prison secret realm. Then, he shifted the topic to the various major powers in the Tianfeng Prefecture. You all know that Danyang County is one of the 7 counties under the jurisdiction of the Tianfeng Prefecture. You should be clear about the situation in Danyang County. After all, there are only 2 major sects in Danyang County, our Celestial Equal Sect and Xingyang Sect. But other than Danyang County, do you know about the other 6 counties? Tian Guochuan said slowly. Hearing his words, everyone's interest was piqued, including Xiao Chun. That's right. All the major powers in the Tianfeng Prefecture would participate in the Glory Sect selection. As for the other major powers, including Xiao Chun, no one knew anything about them. Sensing the change in everyone's gazes, Tian Guochuan smiled slightly. He didn't keep them in suspense and introduced the major powers in the Tianfeng Prefecture in detail. According to Tian Guochuan, other than Danyang County, there were a total of 16 sects in the 7 counties under the jurisdiction of the Tianfeng Prefecture. These 16 sects all had half-step sages, but the ones that needed the most attention were the 3 major sections. These 3 sects were known to be second only to Tianfeng Shengzong in the Tianfeng Prefecture. There was more than 1 half-step sage in each sect. Of course, these 3 sects were known to be the strongest because Gu Qi's true cultivation had not been exposed. Otherwise, the Celestial Equal Sect would also be a Glory Sect. The 3 sects that needed the most attention were the Evil Demon Temple, the White Mist Sect, and the Iron Sword Sect. In the past, these 3 sects had the best results in the Glory Sect selection. In the Darkness Prison Secret Realm, Anyone who encountered these three sects would basically have all their points snatched away. After explaining the situation of the evil demon temple, the White Mist sect, and the Iron Sword sect to everyone, Tian Guichuan finally said with a serious face. Moreover, according to reliable sources, the evil demon temple, the White Mist sect, and the Iron Sword sect all have good seedlings in this glory sect selection. These three sects have also done their best to draw the tripartite formation. In other words, the evil demon temple, the White Mist sect, and the Iron Sword sect should have at least 3 disciples who have the strength of the Tao validation realm. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 543. The Skywind Mansion had 7 counties under its jurisdiction. Within the 7 counties, there were a total of 18 sects that had half-step saints. The strongest amongst them were the Evil Demon Temple, the White Mist sect, and the Iron Sword sect. Not only were their strengths the strongest, but they also possessed the deepest resources. For the Sage sect selection, all the sects would definitely bring out their trump cards. With the support of all the resources, there would definitely be many talented disciples who would stand out. Their strength would increase by leaps and bounds in a short period of time. Just like Gu Lingyao and Xiao Chun from Tianqi sect, they had broken through to Dao verification realm in less than 2 months. Of course, Xiao Qin's breakthrough did not consume much of Tianqi sect's resources. It was all thanks to Xu Feng's help. Otherwise, with Tianqi sect's foundation, it would not be enough for 2 talented disciples to break through to Dao verification realm at the same time. Tian Guichuan explained the situation of all the major sects in Tianfeng Mansion to everyone in detail, especially the 3 sects, Demon Evil Temple and Tianqi sect. Tian Guichuan repeatedly reminded them to avoid them as much as possible. Not only were these 3 sects strong, but they also had the most people. As everyone knew, every time the Sage sect selection began, the number of people entering the Abyss Prison Secret Realm would be determined by Tianfeng Shengzong. For example, Tianqi sect only had 70 people, 60 of whom were vassals. However, for Demon Evil Temple and Demon Evil Temple, they each had 100 people entering the Abyss Prison Secret Realm. 20 of them were contestants, and 80 of them were vassals. With such a huge difference in numbers and the strength of the 3 sects, it was naturally unwise to fight them head-on. After telling everyone the things they needed to pay attention to, they did not run around for the next few days. Instead, they waited quietly in their residences for the Sage sect selection to begin. 3 days passed by quickly. Early in the morning, all the major sects that had arrived at Tianfeng Mansion City in advance rushed towards Tianfeng Sacred Mountain. Like the other sects, Tianqi sect also rushed to Tianfeng Sacred Mountain through the transportation array under the lead of Tian Guichuan and the other 3 elders. From the Tianfeng Prefecture City, there was a teleportation array that led directly to the foot of the Tianfeng Sacred Mountain. Of course, there was no way for them to ascend the Tianfeng Sacred Mountain. They could only wait at the foot of the mountain. At the same time, the Tianfeng Shangzong people would open the entrance to the Hell Prison Secret Realm. It didn't take long for Xiao Chun and the others to arrive at the foot of Skywind Sacred Mountain in less than an hour. However, when they stepped out of the teleportation array, many people had already gathered around them. These people were divided into different factions. When the Tianqi sect appeared, there were naturally people who came to greet Tian Guichuan and the other 3 elders. Tian Guichuan smiled and responded to these people. However, this casual conversation was constantly filled with the smell of gunpowder. Tianfeng Shengzong's people hadn't appeared yet, so everyone could only wait patiently. While everyone was waiting, the teleportation array lit up again, and a group of bald monks wearing monks' robes walked out of the array. This was a group of monks, but they didn't have the kindness of monks. On the contrary, they gave people the impression that they were very ferocious and tyrannical. This was the Evil Demon Temple. With the arrival of the Evil Demon Temple, everyone present was slightly stunned. At the same time, the leader of the Evil Demon Temple was actually a half-step saint expert. As mentioned before, The Evil Demon Temple, the White Mist Sect, and the Iron Sword Sect didn't only have one half-step saint expert. After glancing at the crowd indifferently, the half-step saint expert of the Evil Demon Temple silently came to the front of the crowd. Not long after the Evil Demon Temple's arrival, the people of the White Mist Sect and the Iron Sword Sect also appeared one after another. Like the Evil Demon Temple, the leaders of these two sects were also half-step saints. When the three sects gathered, they stood at the front of the crowd. The other forces consciously chose to retreat. There was no other way. The strength of these three sects was second only to the windless sacred sect. They couldn't be provoked. The 18 sects of the Tianfeng mansion had all arrived. At this moment, two old men wearing Tianfeng Shengzong clothes appeared on the scene. Both of them were half-step saints. Seeing the appearance of these two old men, even the leaders of the Evil Demon Temple and the other two sects lowered their heads and bowed respectfully. Greetings, elders. These two were the elders of Tianfeng Shengzong. Their cultivation was at the half-step saint level. Facing the greetings of the crowd, one of the old men smiled and said, "Everyone, there's no need to be so courteous." As his voice fell, the two elders of Tianfeng Shengzong didn't waste any time. They directly took out a token and opened the entrance of the dark prison's secret realm. The sacred sect selection would also last for a month. During this month, everyone would enter the dark prison's secret realm to compete for points. Of course, everything that happened in the dark prison's secret realm would be clearly seen by the outside world. As the dark prison's secret realm opened, the two elders of Tianfeng Shengzong shouted in unison, "Everyone go in." As their voices fell, the disciples of the various sects rushed into the dark prison secret realm. On the Tianqi sect side, Tian Guichuan looked at the disciples and said in a deep voice, "Remember, the dark prison secret realm isn't like our Tianqi sect's secret realm. There's real danger in it. Not only are there prisoners and demonic beasts imprisoned in the dark prison secret realm, but the disciples of the other sects are also your opponents. You must not let your guard down. You must know how to be united." After speaking, Tian Guichuan looked at Xiao Chun and Gu Lingyao and said, "This time, it's up to the two of you." Hearing Tian Guichuan's words, Xiao Chun and Gu Lingyao nodded slightly. Then, under the lead of Xiao Chun and Gu Lingyao, the people of the Tianqi sect also rushed into the dark prison secret realm. Soon, all the disciples of the 18 major sects had entered the dark prison secret realm. Only the elders of the various sects who were responsible for protecting them remained. There were only a few dozen of them. With a smile on his face, the Tianfeng Shengzong elder who spoke earlier said, "Let's go, everyone. We'll go up the mountain together and see how these little guys perform." The disciples had already entered the dark prison's secret realm, and these old fellows had also been invited to the Tianfeng Shengzong. In the main hall of Tianfeng Shengzong, Tian Guichuan and the other experts of the various sects had gathered. At the same time, there was a huge light screen in the center of the hall. Through this light screen, they could clearly see the scene in the dark prison secret realm. At the same time, everyone present could clearly see what was happening in the dark prison secret realm. Everyone took their seats. At this time, the half-saint expert of the Iron Sword sect took the lead and said, "The old rules apply. No matter what happens in the dark prison's secret realm, no one is allowed to take revenge. Whoever dies in the dark prison's secret realm can only blame themselves for not being strong enough. Everyone has no objections, right?" Chapter 544. Now that the glory sect selection had begun, many disciples from various sects had gathered together. Furthermore, the Heavenly Wind Saint sect did not forbid killing between disciples. Therefore, every time the glory sect selection began, many disciples would die within the hell's secret grounds. Some of these people were killed by the prisoners and demonic beasts in the darkness prison secret realm, while others were killed by the disciples of other sections. Such an intense massacre would inevitably lead to animosity between the sections. Therefore, many of them had agreed that no matter what happened in the darkness prison secret realm, after hearing the words of the half-saint expert from the Devil Evil Temple, the crowd nodded their heads in agreement. This was already a rule that did not need to be said. At the same time, the Heavenly Wind Sacred Sect had also clearly stated that if any sect were to seek revenge because of what happened in the Black Prison Secret Realm, they would be punished by the Heavenly Wind Sacred Sect. Seeing everyone nod their heads, the half-saint from the Devil's Temple smiled and looked at the light screen. All the disciples of the various sects had already entered the Dark Prison Secret Realm. At this moment, Shao Chan appeared in a dense forest with only 8 disciples of the Celestial Equal sect following him. When entering the Darkness Prison Secret Realm, everyone would be separated. This was no secret. Naturally, all the sects had their own ways to deal with this. Looking at the disciples beside him, Shao Chan said softly, "Send the signal." In order to gather their disciples in the shortest time possible, the Celestial Equal sect had specially made a signal talisman. Hearing Shao Chen's words, the Celestial Equal sect disciple nodded his head and took out a talisman from his storage ring. After activating it, the talisman turned into a ball of fire and shot straight into the sky before exploding. This was the signal from the Celestial Equal sect, telling the surrounding disciples to gather here. Since the signal had been sent out, Shao Chun and the rest waited at the same spot. They did not know how many disciples would come, but Shao Chun only planned to wait for a day. After a day, no matter how many people came, he would begin to venture deeper into the Darkness Prison Secret Realm. A day passed quickly. During this time, the disciples of the Celestial Equal sect had also arrived at Shao Chun and the rest. A total of 23 disciples had gathered around Shao Chun. This was not a small number. What made Shao Chun the happiest was that Mu Feng had also come. This was great. As a peerless genius, Mu Feng had also obtained a place in the competition. Seeing that he had already gathered so many disciples of the Celestial Equal sect, he guessed that Guling Yao's side would also gather more people. From the looks of it, it was still all right. The disciples of the Celestial Equal sect were divided into 2 groups. Moreover, as they continued to explore the depths of the Abyss Secret Realm, they would definitely meet each other. "Let's go." Slowly getting up, Shao Chun said to the people around him. Hearing Shao Chen's words, the crowd naturally had no objections. They immediately followed Shao Chun and soared into the sky, heading deeper into the Darkness Prison Secret Realm. The Darkness Prison Secret Realm was very big and dark. It was as if the creator had already determined the main color of this small world when he created it. The sky was dusky at all times, and the drizzle never stopped. As a result, the entire Dark Prison Secret Realm was extremely damp and gloomy. The ground and the mountains were all black when seen from afar. It was an extremely uncomfortable sight. But then again, it made sense. The Dark Prison Secret Realm was originally a small world used to imprison prisoners and demonic beasts. To put it bluntly, the Dark Prison Secret Realm was an enlarged version of a prison. However, compared to a prison, the Dark Prison Secret Realm was much bigger. Along the way, Mu Feng and the other 2 participants followed Shao Chun closely. One of them said to Shao Chun with a thoughtful expression, "Senior brother Shao Chun, if we want to quickly accumulate points, I'm afraid we have to go to the prison city." The prison city was a city unique to the Darkness Prison Secret Realm. In the Darkness Prison Secret Realm, the number of prisoners was not small. There were at least 100,000 prisoners. Including the demonic beasts, the total number of prisoners was probably more than 200,000. However, even though there were 200,000 prisoners and demonic beasts, the Darkness Prison Secret Realm was simply too big. Therefore, it was not easy to find them all. This was because the prisoners would not wander around the Darkness Prison Secret Realm alone. In order to survive here, the prisoners and demonic beasts would often gather and form Prison City in the Darkness Prison Secret Realm. Although the prison city looked like a city on the surface, it was actually a gathering place for the prisoners. They built simple wooden huts and formed a city scattered all over the Darkness Prison Secret Realm. The best way to quickly accumulate points was to attack these prison city. After all, in each prison city, there were at least hundreds and thousands of prisoners gathered together. If one could kill all of them, the points would obviously be a lot. However, attacking Prison City was also very dangerous because these prisoners were not to be trifled with. If they were not a match for them, They would go for wool and come home shorn. Not only would they not be able to obtain any points, they might even lose their lives there. One must know that these prodigious disciples were not the only ones who wanted to kill the prisoners to gain points. The prisoners would also not show any mercy to Shao Chun and the other prodigious disciples. Once they had the chance, they would definitely kill them. After hearing this disciple say that they should attack the prison city, Shao Chun pondered for a moment before asking, "Let's look around first. If there is a small prison city, we can take action. However, if it is a large prison city, I'm afraid it will be very dangerous for the 20 of us." After hearing Shao Chun's words, the disciple nodded in agreement. Indeed, if they were to encounter a large prison city, Shao Chun and the other 20 disciples were obviously not enough. The group searched along the way, and soon they left the dense forest and arrived at a plain. This was a black plain where not even a blade of grass grew. Perhaps because the ground was too wet, it had already turned black. Shao Chun walked along the plain toward the depths of the dark dungeon arcane realm. When he arrived at the mansion on the plain, Shao Chun could feel the aftershocks of a battle from afar. There is a battle in front. Be careful. Let's go and take a look. There were people fighting in front of them. However, he did not know if it was a battle between the sect disciples and the prisoners or an internal battle between the sect disciples. After hearing Shao Chun's words, the group cautiously walked forward. Soon, the group arrived at the place where the battle had erupted. From afar, Shao Chun could see two groups of people engaged in an intense battle. One group of people was wearing the clothes of the sect disciples, while the other group was wearing clothes that did not cover their bodies. It was obvious that they were the prisoners of the darkness prison's secret realm, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 545. They stopped far away and watched the intense battle. At the same time, a celestial equal sect disciple beside Shao Chun whispered, "Senior brother Shao Chun, they are disciples of the fire god sect." Through the clothes on their bodies, Shao Chun quickly determined that the people fighting with these death row prisoners were the disciples of the fire god school of the Skywind Mansion. However, Shao Chun did not pay attention to them at this moment. On the contrary, Shao Chun's gaze had fallen on these death row prisoners from the beginning. Compared to the fire god sect, Shao Chun was clearly more interested in the prisoners in the Hell Secret Realm. There was no other reason other than that they were the targets of the Glory sect selection this time. After some observation, even though the clothes on the prisoners were tattered, every single one of them was emitting a thick stench of blood when they fought. With a single glance, one could tell that they were people whose hands were stained with blood. Their attacks were even more ruthless. Prisoners who could be locked up in the Hell Secret Realm were definitely evil people. Facing them, the disciples of the Fire God sect could not hold on any longer. Both sides had about the same number of people. There were about 20 disciples of the Fire God sect. Similarly, there were only about 20 prisoners they were facing. Both sides were engaged in an intense battle. At this moment, the Fire God sect was gradually at a disadvantage. That's strange. Why isn't there a king of pride who has broken through to the Tao validation realm in the Fire God sect? Looking at the people of the Fire God sect, Mu Feng asked with a puzzled expression. Every time the Glory sect selection began, the various sects of the Sky Wind Mansion would take out a huge amount of resources to allow one or a few disciples to break through and improve quickly. Just like Guling Yao. Logically speaking, the Fire God School should at least have a king of geniuses that had broken through to the Tao validation realm to hold down the fort. Unfortunately, there wasn't a king of geniuses at the Tao validation realm amongst these 20 disciples of the Fire God School. Perhaps the situation of the Fire God School is the same as ours. They're just unlucky. Up until now, they haven't met the main group of their Fire God School, said a disciple from the Celestial Equals sect beside Mu Feng. While everyone was talking, the situation of the Fire God School became more and more dangerous. Without a true king of prides holding the fort, the disciples of the Fire God School were clearly not a match for the group of death row prisoners in front of them. Originally, he didn't plan to help. After all, Shao Chun wasn't a saint, and he wasn't related to the Fire God School in any way, so naturally, he couldn't help them. However, when Xiao Qian's gaze swept past the disciples of the Fire God School, with a single glance, Xiao Chun saw quite a few familiar figures within the group of disciples. Xiao Chun recognized the 5 disciples from the Fire God sect. All of them were from the heavenly Chun mainland. One of them was even a peerless heavens chosen from 9 Firmaments Palace. Previously, Xiao Chun had already considered the possibility of meeting people from the Tianqian continent in the Glory Sect selection. Seeing the 5 of them, Xiao Chun could no longer stand idly by. Without any hesitation, he shouted in a low voice, "Let's go and help them." Upon hearing Xiao Qian's sudden decision to save these disciples of the Fire God School, although the disciples of the Celestial Equal sect were puzzled, they didn't say much. After the trip to the 100 Refinements Valley, Xiao Qian's reputation in the Celestial Equal sect had naturally increased by a lot. Furthermore, these disciples of the Celestial Equal sect had all been beaten up by Xiao Qian before. Faced with Xiao Qian's orders, they naturally didn't have the courage to disobey. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Qian took the lead and charged into the battlefield. The cultivation of this group of death row prisoners was mostly at the Dao-seeking realm. Among them, there were 2 who were at the Dao validation realm, but they were only at the entry realm. Such strength was naturally nothing to Xiao Qian. The disciples of the Fire God School, who were originally ashen-faced, saw Xiao Qian taking the lead and charging into the battlefield. For a moment, many of them muttered softly in surprise. The king of Celestial Equal sect, the entry realm of the Dao validation realm, someone from the Celestial Equal sect. Because Xiao Qian had directly exposed his cultivation, everyone could see that Xiao Qian was at the entry realm of the Dao validation realm. In the Darkness Prison Secret Realm, the king of Dao validation realm was considered the strongest in their respective forces. Originally, they were already in a desperate situation, but Xiao Qian's sudden appearance gave these Fire God School disciples new hope. However, the ones who were the most excited were naturally the 5 heavenly Chun continent cultivators. They also recognized that the person who came was Xiao Chun. At this moment, the 5 of them were stunned on the spot with an excited expression. For the time being, they didn't have the mood to care about the changes in everyone's expression. With the addition of Xiao Chun and the disciples of the Celestial Equal sect, the situation of the battle immediately reversed. The death row prisoners who originally had the upper hand quickly suffered heavy casualties, especially under Xiao Qian's hands. Even though these death row prisoners were extremely fierce, they still couldn't cause any waves. From the moment Xiao Chun led the Celestial Equal sect to attack, it only took half an hour for the 20 death row prisoners to be slaughtered. As for the points, they were naturally pocketed by the Celestial Equal sect. When entering the Darkness Prison Secret Realm, everyone received a Jade token. This Jade token only had one function, and that was to record the points. Of course, the Jade tokens in the hands of the vassals were useless. The points they obtained were all given to the participants. After successfully dealing with the death row prisoners, Xiao Chun turned his head to look at the Fire God School's group. But to be precise, Xiao Qian's gaze stopped on the 5 heavenly Chun continent cultivators. Facing Xiao Qian's gaze, a king of Fire God School stood out and cupped his hands in thanks. "Thank you for saving us, senior brother. May I know senior brother's name? I will definitely repay you in the future." Not noticing Xiao Qian's strange behavior, Xiao Chun ignored the king of Fire God School's words. It was at this time that the 5 heavenly Chun continent cultivators excitedly came to Xiao Chun and called out happily, "Senior brother Xiao Chun." Xiao Chun had helped them because of the 5 heavenly Chun continent cultivators. Looking at the 5, Xiao Chun and the king of Fire God School smiled and asked, "How did you all join the Fire God School?" This. Meeting people from the heavenly Chun continent again, Xiao Chun was in a good mood. Then he found a place where no one was around, and the 5 of them told Xiao Chun what had happened to them. According to the 5 of them, ever since they came to the Heavenly River continent, they had been wandering around the Fire God School's county. Then, they joined the Fire God School one after another. After all, the Fire God School was a fake saint-level family, so it was naturally better to cultivate there. After having a rough understanding of the five's experiences, Xiao Chun asked if they had seen other heavenly Chun continent cultivators. Hearing this, the five of them replied honestly that they had seen a few, but in other sections a total of 50,000 heavenly Chun continent cultivators went to the heavenly river continent, and there should be quite a few in the Skywind Prefecture. After a brief conversation with the five of them, Xiao Chun realized that in this glory sect selection, he would probably meet many heavenly Chun continent cultivators. Of course, he would only meet the younger generation. As for the older generation of heavenly Chun continent cultivators, they would naturally not participate in this glory sect selection. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 546. While Xiao Chun was chatting with the five of them, the other disciples of the Celestial Equals sect and the Fire God School were standing far away. Although they were curious about what Xiao Chun was talking about with them, the disciples of the Fire God School didn't dare to approach, including the King of Prides. There was no other way. Xiao Chun was at the initial stage of the Tao confirmation realm. How could these disciples of the Fire God School dare to provoke him? Mu Feng naturally followed Xiao Chun. After understanding the situation of the five, they casually chatted for a while. Afterward, Xiao Chun and Mu Feng returned to the Celestial Equal Sex camp. The five heavenly Chun continent cultivators also returned to the Fire God School's camp. Although he saved their lives, Xiao Chun didn't plan to bring them along. First of all, they weren't from the Celestial Equal sect, not to mention that it wasn't realistic to bring them along. Most importantly, everyone was currently searching for their own opportunities in the Heavenly River continent. Xiao Chun didn't want to interfere too much with others. If he could help, he would help. At most, that was all he could do. When it was time to part, it was unknown what the five Heavenly Chun continent cultivators said to the King of Prides. After hesitating for a while, the King of Prides took the initiative to approach Xiao Chun. Senior brother Xiao Chun, thank you for saving my life this time. Junior brother is willing to repay senior brother with some information about the prison city. Oh, information about the prison city? Xiao Chun's interest was piqued when he heard this proud king from the Fire God sect say that he had information about the prison city. The prison city was the best way to quickly accumulate points. Along the way, Xiao Chun and the rest were also paying attention to any news about the prison city. Without hiding anything, the King of Prides told Xiao Chun the truth. According to him, the reason why they were surrounded by those prisoners was because they rashly entered the sphere of influence of the prison city. The prison city was located in the east of this plain. Previously, they had found the prison city by chance. Unfortunately, before they could do anything, they were chased down by the prisoners in the prison city. According to what this proud king of the Fire God School had said, the scale of this prison city wasn't large. At most, there were only 100 or so death row prisoners gathered here, and excluding the 20 death row prisoners that were killed by Xiao Chun and the others earlier, the number of death row prisoners gathered in Prison City, right now, would definitely not exceed 100 people. A prison city of this scale was difficult for the disciples of the Fire God School to defeat. However, if they could join forces with the Celestial Equal sect led by Xiao Chun, it would be a different story. After telling Xiao Chun about the situation of this prison city in detail, Xiao Chun didn't immediately answer after hearing the words of this proud monarch from the Fire God Gate. Instead, he sank in a deep thought. Although this prison city was very tempting, its scale wasn't large with less than 100 people. In this way, if the two sides joined forces, it was indeed possible for them to destroy this prison city. However, it didn't mean that they would definitely succeed. This was because in terms of numbers, their side was still slightly lesser. The Celestial Equals sect and the Fire God School added up to less than 50 people. If they wanted to take down this prison city, they would probably have to pay attention to some strategy. After a moment of silence, Xiao Chun looked at the proud monarch from the Fire God School and said, "Junior brother Su Luo, let's go take a look at the situation of the prison city before making any plans." Xiao Chun didn't rashly make a decision. After hearing Xiao Chun's words, Su Luo didn't have any objections. He nodded and replied, "Everything will be decided by senior brother Xiao Chun." Su Luo could be considered an influential figure in the Fire God School. However, it was a pity that his situation was similar to Chao He's. As he didn't receive any resources from the sect, Su Luo's cultivation was still at the lesser completion Dao querying realm. His cultivation wasn't as high as Xiao Chen's, and his combat strength was far from Xiao Chen's. Therefore, in this cooperation between the two sides, Xiao Chun naturally became the core of everyone. He was the one who decided on the specific action plan. Facing the respectful Su Luo, Xiao Chun smiled faintly. He then told the Celestial Equal Sex disciples. When they heard that the Fire God School had actually found a prison city and it wasn't large in scale, the Celestial Equal Sex disciples became excited. There was no doubt that as long as they could successfully take down this prison city, the points they would obtain would definitely not be small. Everyone was secretly excited. Then, under Su Luo's lead, everyone headed east. This place wasn't far from the prison city that Su Luo mentioned. In less than 2 hours, everyone arrived at the location of the prison city. This place was already at the edge of the plains, bordering the forest. The prison city was built at the foot of a mountain. Looking from afar, Xiao Chan saw that the place looked like a small village. Wooden houses were clustered together to form the prison city. At the same time, there was a fence made of wood all around, surrounding the many houses. To be honest, this couldn't even be considered a city. However, in the Darkness Prison's secret realm, such a place was called a prison city. Not acting rashly, Xiao Chun and the rest hid behind a huge rock far away as they discussed the action plan. The number of people isn't a problem. However, we don't know the cultivation level of the strongest person in this prison city. If there are prisoners that have surpassed the Dao validation realm, then we can't act rashly. Xiao Chun looked at everyone and said softly. Xiao Chun was most concerned about the cultivation level of the strongest person in this prison city. This was the most important thing. Hearing Xiao Chun's words, Su Luo said with a serious expression, "When we were being chased just now, I faintly heard that the 2 leaders of the death row prisoners were the big leader and the second leader. It seems that the 2 Dao validation realm prisoners that were killed by senior brother Xiao Chun earlier might be the strongest people in this prison city." Hearing Su Luo's words, Xiao Chen's eyes lit up. In the previous battle, he had indeed killed 2 death row prisoners at the beginning of the Dao proving realm. If what Su Luo said was true, and those 2 were the chief and second chief of this prison city, then things would be simple. Everyone could just directly kill their way in and easily destroy the prisoners and demonic beasts in this prison city. Are you sure about this? Xiao Chun looked at Su Luo and asked with a serious expression. Senior brother Xiao Chun, I heard it clearly. The prisoners did indeed call for the big leader and the second leader. In response to Xiao Chen's question, Su Luo nodded and replied with an extremely serious expression. Su Luo was certain that he had not heard wrongly. Hearing this, Xiao Chun made a prompt decision and ordered everyone to immediately attack the prison city. However, they could not go too deep. If it was as Su Luo said and there were no experts in this prison city, then they would directly destroy it. However, if the information provided by Su Luo was wrong, then everyone could choose to retreat immediately. Naturally, no one objected to Xiao Chen's decision. As for how the points would be distributed, it was actually very simple. The points would naturally belong to whoever killed the prisoners. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 547. With the decision made, everyone immediately launched an attack on the prison city. Under the lead of Xiao Chun and Su Luo, more than 40 disciples of the Celestial Equal Sect and the Fire God Sect rushed towards the prison city. There was no protection at all. Just a simple wooden fence was naturally unable to stop the attack of the disciples of the 2 sections. However, as the disciples of the 2 sects launched their attack, many of the prisoners in the prison city quickly gathered together. In just over 10 breaths, there were already 70 to 80 prisoners gathered in the open space outside the prison city. Each of them had a ferocious look on their faces. The murderous aura on their bodies gathered together, causing one to involuntarily feel a chill down one's spine. These damned disciples of the sects actually dare to attack the prison city. They're courting death. A prisoner with a cultivation base at the peak of the Tao querying realm shouted coldly when he saw Xiao Chun and the others charging towards him. They're trying to eat us in one bite, aren't they? They really don't know what's good for them. Brothers, let's kill these disciples of the sects today and stew them in a pot. Ha! It's been a long time since I've eaten human flesh. Moreover, these are the genius disciples of the sections. I think their flesh must be very delicious. Facing the charge of Xiao Chun and the others, these prisoners showed no signs of fear at all. Some even suggested that they should eat the flesh of Xiao Chun and the others. Never underestimate the prisoners of the dark prison's secret realm, and even more so, don't pity them. These guys were a bunch of perverts. Eating people was a common occurrence for them. In fact, in the dark prison's secret realm, it was not uncommon for prisoners to eat other prisoners. There were once disciples of the sects who pitted these prisoners. During the battle, they took pity on them and did not kill them in the end. However, in the end, these pitiful disciples were killed by these prisoners instead. Even their corpses were eaten by them. Therefore, when facing these prisoners, one must not show the slightest bit of mercy, let alone be soft-hearted. Unsheathing the ink dragon sword, Xiao Chun stood at the front of the group. He directly slashed out with his sword. A terrifying sword edge flashed past, instantly slicing several prisoners in half. So powerful. Su Luo was shocked to see Xiao Chun beheading several prisoners with a single slash. Isn't he too strong? As the sword fell, both sides clashed head-on at the same time. A fierce battle broke out in an instant. Xiao Chun raised his sword and slashed down, ending the life of another prisoner. He then shouted in a deep voice, "Kill!" Under the leadership of Xiao Chun, the morale of the disciples of the two sects soared. On the other hand, the death row prisoners did not change their expressions at all. Although they could see that Xiao Chun was extremely powerful, would they be afraid? Obviously it wouldn't. To these prisoners, they no longer cared about life and death. No matter what, their fates were already set in stone. Even if they could escape death this time, they would never be able to get out of the darkness prison's secret realm. A fierce battle broke out, and Xiao Chun kept a close eye on the situation during the battle. Soon, he found a most powerful person among the prisoners on death row. It was a middle-aged, burly man with a ferocious appearance. The murderous aura on his body was extremely dense, and he had a cultivation base of the Tao validation realm. Among the 70 to 80 prisoners, only this burly man had a cultivation base of the Tao validation realm. The others were either in the Tao querying realm or the sky realm. Is this guy the strongest? Xiao Chun said softly as his gaze locked onto the burly man. As Xiao Chun spoke, the burly man attacked a disciple of the celestial equal sect. Facing a burly man with a cultivation base of the Tao validation realm, the celestial equal sect disciple was naturally no match for him. In just one move, he was forced to retreat a few steps. Haha, you're all talk and no substance. You can't even take a single punch from me. If that's the case, go to hell. The burly man sneered after repelling the celestial equal sect disciple with a single punch. He then stepped forward again, ready to kill the celestial equal sect disciple. Don't expect these prisoners to show mercy. It was impossible. Seeing the burly man rushing towards him, the celestial equal sect disciple's face turned pale. Although he wanted to resist with all his might, there was nothing he could do in the face of a huge gap in strength. Just when the celestial equal sect disciple thought he was going to die, a sword light suddenly flashed and forced the burly man to retreat. Then, Xiao Chun appeared in front of the celestial equal sect disciple. Senior brother Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun's appearance made the disciple overjoyed. Hearing that, Xiao Chun said indifferently, "Go kill the others. I'll deal with this person." Yes, senior brother Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun naturally couldn't let the others deal with the burly man in front of him. Other than himself, the others were no match for this burly man. After forcing the celestial equal sect disciple to retreat, The burly man looked at Xiao Chun and said with a sneer, "You're the strongest among them, aren't you? Haha, interesting. However, you disciples of the sects are all superficial. You have cultivation but don't know how to fight." "Oh, is that so? Then let's try." The burly man's meaning was obvious. Xiao Chun and the other disciples of the sect were young, but their cultivation wasn't weak. However, in terms of combat experience, they obviously couldn't compare to the prisoners who had crawled out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. He was treating Xiao Chun as a flower in a greenhouse. However, was that really the case? Along the way, the battles that Xiao Chun had experienced were probably no less than those death row prisoners. Xiao Chun didn't want to engage in a meaningless argument with the burly man. As soon as he finished speaking, he took the initiative to attack. Sword intent gushed out, and he slashed out with his sword. Sensing the soaring sword intent on Xiao Chun, the burly man was obviously stunned. "You've comprehended sword intent in such a short time, and have already reached the limit of minor accomplishment. Not simple, not simple. However, do you think you can kill me with this? You're simply too naive. Let me capture you. I think the taste of flesh and blood of a genius, like you, must be very delicious." He was a little surprised by Xiao Chen's powerful sword intent, but that was it. Facing this sword, the burly man had no intention of dodging. He suddenly blasted out a punch and forcibly shattered Xiao Chen's sword. The burly man didn't fall into a disadvantageous position in a head-on confrontation. Seeing this, Xiao Chun smiled slightly and said, "Not bad. You can take my casual sword. Unfortunately, that's all." With that, Xiao Chun leaned forward and the two immediately engaged in a fierce battle. While Xiao Chun and the disciples of the two sects were fighting fiercely with the prisoners, not far away, a group of about 30 people was watching all this with cold eyes. Judging from the clothes these people were wearing, they were the disciples of the Iron Sword sect. The leader of the group was watching the battle in front of him with an arrogant look. At this time, a disciple of the Iron Sword sect next to him whispered, "Senior Brother Zhou, shall we take action? Please collect, please vote, please recommend." Chapter 548. Naturally, Xiao Chun and the others did not realize that there was a pair of Iron Sword sect disciples watching them coldly from afar. At this moment, the leader of the Iron Sword sect disciples revealed a sinister smile when he heard the words of the person next to him. "Why should we attack? Isn't it better to let them fight amongst themselves first before we clean up the mess?" Senior Brother Zhou is right. The Iron Sword sect disciple chuckled coldly upon hearing the words of his senior brother Zhou. The disciples of the Celestial Equals sect and the Fire God Gate joined forces to attack the prison city. Such an intense battle naturally attracted people from other sections. After all, with so many people fighting together, it was impossible to hide the aftermath of the battle. Following the appearance of the Iron Sword sect, more disciples from other sects arrived one after another. However, the moment they caught sight of the Iron Sword sect, their faces changed. This was especially so when they caught sight of the leader, Senior Brother Zhou. Everyone instinctively retreated a distance away from him. "Zhou Hua, damn it, why is Zhou Hua here? Seems like there's no share for us in this prison city." The leader of a sect looked at Zhou Hua with an ugly expression. The leader of the Iron Sword sect was Zhou Hua, one of the top 3 disciples of the Iron Sword sect. Since the Iron Sword sect was known as one of the top 3 sects, second only to Tian Feng Xingzong, its foundation was naturally incomparable to any other sect. For the sake of the Glory Sect selection this time around, the Iron Sword sect spared no expense in engraving the tripartite Tao formation, allowing 3 of their top geniuses to break through to the Tao validation realm. These 3 were the top 3 disciples of the Iron Sword sect, and Zhou Hua was one of them. Without a doubt, Zhou Hua's strength was at the peak of the Iron Sword sect's disciples. Moreover, with the Iron Sword sect's foundation, even if Zhou Hua encountered other Tao Vindication Realm geniuses from other sects, he would still be able to defeat them. This was the terrifying aspect of the 3 great sections. It was also the reason why the other sects constantly reminded their disciples to retreat if they encountered anyone from the three great sects in the Abyss Prison Secret Realm. One after another, disciples of 7 or 8 sects had gathered around the battlefield. However, these sects had obviously given up on this prison city because Zhou Hua was present. They were very clear that with Zhou Hua leading the Iron Sword sect, it was impossible for them to obtain the points of this prison city. More and more disciples from various sects gathered around. At this time, Xiao Chen also felt this. After killing the burly man, Mu Feng came to Xiao Chen's side and said with a worried expression, "Brother Xiao Chen, there are already many disciples from various sects gathered here. What do they want to do? You still don't understand? Of course, they want to reap the benefits." Hearing Mu Feng's words, Xiao Chen said with a smile. The disciples of the 7 or 8 sects looked at John Doe's eruption from afar, but did not have the slightest intention to intervene. How could Xiao Chen not know what they were thinking? It was nothing more than waiting for the winner to be determined so that they could snatch the points from everyone's hands. A cold light flashed in his eyes. These guys wanted to snatch the points from his hands. This was somewhat interesting, but he did not know who would be the one to snatch the points from in the end. Xiao Chen did not restrain himself because of these disciples' covetous gazes. He still ordered everyone to end the battle in the shortest time possible. Since the strongest Dao Vindication Realm prisoner had been killed by Xiao Chen, the following matters were naturally much simpler. Under the leadership of Xiao Chen and Su Luo, the prisoners in the prison city were quickly killed by the disciples. After successfully destroying this prison city, everyone naturally reaped a bountiful harvest. However, because of this fierce battle, many of the disciples were injured. Among them, there were a few who were seriously injured. It was obvious that they no longer had the strength to continue fighting. They had finally succeeded, but no one was too happy because they also discovered the current situation. Su Luo came to Xiao Chen's side and said with a solemn expression, "Brother Xiao Chen, we are surrounded by the disciples of other sections. What should we do now? What can we do? We'll just have to deal with whatever comes our way. They want to take advantage of us. What a coincidence. I'm also very interested in the points in their hands." Hearing Su Luo's words, Xiao Chen smiled without the slightest nervousness. Seeing Xiao Chen's calm face, although Su Luo's heart was still heavy, he did not say anything more. Based on the current situation, he could only pin his hopes on Xiao Chen. However, just as Su Luo was thinking about this, a clapping sound came from the sky. Then, a group of disciples from the Iron Sword sect flew in the sky and quickly landed in front of everyone. "Ha, not bad, not bad. Heavenly Equal sect and Fire God sect. Not bad. They actually destroyed the prison city." The leader was naturally Zhou Hua. At this moment, he was clapping with a smile on his face and said with a smile. Hearing Zhou Hua's words, Su Luo's face immediately changed. His mood that had just relaxed completely sank at this moment. The people from the Iron Sword sect had also come. Moreover, it was Zhou Hua who led the team. It's over. This was the only thought in Su Luo's heart. He looked at Su Luo. Sure enough, after his words fell and after a short pause, Zhou Hua's gaze directly locked on Xiao Chen. Zhou Hua had a panoramic view of the battle just now. He knew that Xiao Chen's cultivation was at the Dao Validation Realm and was the strongest among the group. Looking at Xiao Chen, Zhou Hua said with a smile, "Okay, now please hand over your points. I don't want to fight." Of course, the premise is that everyone needs to cooperate. Hearing Zhou Hua's words, before Xiao Chen could speak, Su Luo had already sent a voice transmission to Xiao Chen. "Senior brother Xiao Chen, this person is Zhou Hua, one of the 3 great disciples of the Iron Sword sect. His strength is extremely terrifying. It is said that he is not inferior to the core disciples of the Windless Sacred Sect." Xiao Chen was also at the Dao Validation Realm, the same as Zhou Hua. However, Su Luo didn't think that Xiao Chen was a match for Zhou Hua. Therefore, he sent a voice transmission to Xiao Chen. The meaning was very obvious. It was to take a step back and not provoke Zhou Hua and the Iron Sword sect. Just give them the points. Su Luo wanted to settle the matter peacefully. However, was this possible? The things had already entered his pocket. With Xiao Qin's character, how could he obediently hand them over? Let alone Zhou Hua. Even if the three great disciples of the Iron Sword sect gathered at this time, Xiao Chun wouldn't hand over his points. Therefore, Xiao Chun directly chose to ignore Su Luo's voice transmission. He stepped forward and stood in front of Zhou Hua. The two of them were 5 meters apart. Their eyes met. Looking at Zhou Hua, Xiao Chun smiled. Senior brother Zhou Hua, is it? Yes, Zhou Hua said. Nice to meet you. Senior brother Zhou Hua, it seems that you want our points? A wise man submits to circumstances. Hearing Xiao Qin's words, Zhou Hua thought that Xiao Chun was ready to take the initiative to hand over his points. The smile on his face became even brighter. However, just as Zhou Hua's smile bloomed, Xiao Qin's next sentence surprised everyone. Xiao Chun also revealed a harmless smile and said, "Unfortunately, I also want the points in senior brother Zhou Hua's hands. Why don't senior brother Zhou Hua reluctantly part with them and give them to me? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation." Chapter 549. As soon as Xiao Qin said that, everyone present was stunned. What did he mean? Was he planning to rob Zhou Hua and the disciples of the Iron Sword sect? The meaning of Xiao Qin's words was very obvious. Since Zhou Hua wanted to snatch his points, Xiao Qin would give him a taste of his own medicine. Since Zhou Hua wanted to rob him, he would naturally rob him back. Hearing Xiao Qin's words, Zhou Hua was stunned at first, but he soon burst out laughing. It was as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. "Ah, what did you say? You want to rob me of my points? Ha, good, good. I haven't met someone like you in a long time. Very good." Zhou Hua laughed out loud. However, his laughter was filled with dense, killing intent. Anyone could tell that Zhou Hua was enraged at this moment. As one of the three great disciples of the Iron Sword sect, Zhou Hua didn't even put the core disciples of Tianfeng Shengzong in his eyes. Only the personal disciples of Tianfeng Shengzong could make Zhou Hua fear them. Now, a mere disciple of the Tianqi sect dared to say such words. How could Zhou Hua not be angry? Hearing Zhou Hua's words, the faces of the disciples of the other sects changed slightly. This kid is really not afraid of death. He actually dares to say such words to Zhou Hua. He's simply courting death. Let's see how he'll die now. Almost everyone thought that Xiao Chun was crazy. Who was Zhou Hua? To be able to become one of the three great disciples of the Iron Sword sect, Zhou Hua's strength was definitely not just for show. It wasn't an exaggeration at all. Although almost every sect now had a genius disciple of the Tao Vindication realm. If these people met Zhou Hua in the same realm, they would definitely lose. There was no other reason but because Zhou Hua's combat strength was stronger and the foundation of the Iron Sword sect was deeper. In the face of Zhou Hua's laughter, Xiao Chun ignored him. Meanwhile, Su Luo's complexion had already turned deathly pale. It's over. It's completely over now. Originally, it was only a matter of points being stolen, but now, whether or not they could keep their lives was another matter altogether. Su Luo's face was deathly pale. At the same time, Zhou Hua's laughter slowly faded away. He stared intently at Xiao Chun in front of him, murderous intent surfacing as he spoke in an icy tone. "You're very good. However, I'll let you know in a moment that when you say these words, you need to have the strength to match them. Otherwise, you're just courting death." He didn't put Xiao Chun in his eyes at all. Although Xiao Chun was also at the entry level of the Tao Confirmation realm. So what? There were many people in the Tianfeng mansion who could make Zhou Hua feel apprehensive, but Xiao Chun was definitely not one of them. His tone was arrogant, but Xiao Chen's expression was as indifferent as ever. He ignored Zhou Hua and turned his gaze to the deathly pale Su Luo. Xiao Chen smiled faintly. "Junior brother Su Luo, if you don't dare, you can hand over your points and leave. You don't have to worry about me." He had long seen the fear in Su Luo's heart, so Xiao Chun didn't force him to stay. Although this battle would be a bit easier if he had the help of the Fire God School's disciples, Xiao Chun obviously wouldn't force him. Moreover, The crux of this battle was actually Zhou Hua. As long as he could defeat Zhou Hua, then everything would be easily solved. Hearing Xiao Qin's words, Su Luo fell into silence. At the same time, the 5 heavenly Chun continent warriors from the Fire God sect had already arrived behind Xiao Qin. Their intentions were obvious. They were willing to face the Iron Sword sect together with Xiao Qin. Of course, compared to the panic of the Fire God sect's disciples, although the people from the Tianqi sect were uncertain, Xiao Qin was their leader. Now that Xiao Qin wasn't backing down, they naturally wouldn't back down. After a moment of silence, Su Luo finally looked deeply at Xiao Qin. To be honest, Su Luo was naturally unwilling to hand over his points. However, what could he do? The other party was from the Iron Sword sect. But now, seeing the confidence on Xiao Qin's face, Su Luo was a little hesitant. He thought, does this guy really have the confidence to deal with Zhou Hua? He didn't know where Xiao Qin's confidence came from, but his intuition told him that Xiao Qin might really have the confidence to deal with Zhou Hua. Su Luo clenched his teeth and said, Senior brother Xiao Qin, I'll leave Zhou Hua to you. Leave the others to us. Su Luo's words clearly expressed his choice. In the end, Su Luo still chose to believe in Xiao Qin and give it his all. As long as Xiao Qin could hold Zhou Hua back, there was no need to defeat him. Then there would be a fight. Hearing Su Luo's words, Xiao Qin smiled faintly. Zhou Hua snorted coldly and said, Humph, another one who doesn't know his place. Since your Fire God sect also wants to die, then I'll fulfill your wish. Tianqi sect, Fire God sect, everyone here today will die. Obviously, Zhou Hua had the intention to kill Xiao Qin, Su Luo, and the other disciples of the 2 sections. Xiao Qin didn't care about it, and said with a smile, Perhaps the ones who will die in the end will be the people from your Iron Sword sect. Ah, very well. In that case, let me see if your strength is as powerful as your mouth. With a cold smile, Zhou Hua chose to attack first. He took a step forward and threw a punch at Xiao Qin. Following Zhou Hua's attack, the disciples of the Iron Sword sect behind him also took out their weapons and charged towards the disciples of the Tianqi sect and Fire God sect. The battle was about to start. In terms of numbers, the disciples of the Iron Sword sect were clearly fewer. They only had about 30 people. On the other hand, the Tianqi sect and the Fire God sect had a total of about 40 people. Excluding the disciples who were seriously injured, the number of people was still around 40. They had the advantage in terms of numbers. However, this battle didn't depend on the number of people. The one who could decide the outcome of this battle was Xiao Qin and Zhou Hua. The outcome of the battle was directly related to the outcome of this battle. If Xiao Qin was defeated by Zhou Hua in 2 or 3 moves, then even if the Tianqi sect and the Fire God sect had the advantage in numbers, they would still have no chance of winning. This was because no one would be able to restrain Zhou Hua. Everyone knew this. Therefore, after the battle broke out, the surrounding disciples all locked their eyes on the battle between Xiao Qin and Zhou Hua. The battle between the 2 of them was the most crucial. Under everyone's gaze, Zhou Hua's fist carried a terrifying power as it blasted toward Xiao Qin. In the face of Zhou Hua's punch, Xiao Qin didn't have any intention of dodging. He also threw a punch at Zhou Hua's fist. Seeing that Xiao Qin actually wanted to take his punch head-on, the killing intent in Zhou Hua's eyes intensified. He shouted coldly, You're courting death. In Zhou Hua's opinion, Xiao Qin was courting death if he wanted to take him head-on. As soon as Zhou Hua's voice fell, the 2 fists finally collided, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 550. It was a head-on collision without any technique. As the fists of the 2 collided, the ground where the 2 of them were standing instantly cracked. Cracks continuously extended in all directions. At the same time, the powerful shockwave also sent many of the surrounding disciples flying far away. There were disciples from the Tianqi sect, the Fire God sect, and the Iron Sword sect. Regardless of whether they were enemies or allies, as long as they were within 100 meters of Xiao Qin, they were sent flying mercilessly. Facing Zhou Hua, Xiao Chun did not retreat at all. Instead, he used the most simple and violent head-on collision. As the two fists collided, the corners of Xiao Chen's mouth curved into a faint smile. Is that all you've got? That's a little too disappointing. Zhou Hua was indeed one of the top people among the younger generation of the Tianfeng mansion. However, after coming into contact with Zhou Hua, Xiao Chen found that Zhou Hua's strength had disappointed him. In terms of physical strength, Zhou Hua was not able to satisfy Xiao Chun. One must know that Xiao Chun had not even used his tempered battle body. Even so, he was already on par with Zhou Hua. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Zhou Hua was stunned. Unlike Xiao Chun, Zhou Hua was a little surprised. There was no other reason. Xiao Chen's strength was beyond his imagination. Just by coming into contact with him, Zhou Hua knew that Xiao Chen's strength and physical strength were not weaker than his own. He had misjudged Xiao Chun, but Zhou Hua obviously would not admit it. Zhou Hua snorted coldly and said, "Humph, you have some skills, but what can you change? Die for me." Saying that, Zhou Hua sent a whip kick straight at Xiao Chen's face. Seeing this, Xiao Chun leaned back slightly and cleverly avoided Zhou Hua's attack. A strong wind blew past his eyes, and his attack missed. Zhou Hua took the opportunity to summon his celestial weapon, a silver-white longsword. The Iron Sword sect was a sword sect. Almost all of its disciples were sword cultivators. As one of the 3 disciples of the Iron Sword sect, Zhou Hua was naturally a sword cultivator. Seeing Zhou Hua summon his celestial weapon, Xiao Chen also summoned his Black Dragon Sword. Holding the Black Dragon Sword in his hand, a terrifying sword intent immediately gushed out from Xiao Chen's body. Sword will. Zhou Hua was slightly stunned when he sensed Xiao Chen's sword will, because he could feel that the sword will coming from Xiao Chun was not weaker than his own. It seemed that Xiao Chen's sword was about to break through to the level of small success. He did not expect Xiao Chen's sword will to be so powerful. However, Zhou Hua was not an ordinary person either. He also raised his sword will to the extreme. Before they even fought, the sword wills of the two had already begun to compete. With the support of the sword intent, the space within a radius of a few hundred meters around them seemed to be completely sealed. It was as if anyone who broke into this space would be mercilessly attacked by their sword intent. Left with no choice, the other disciples who were in the midst of the fierce battle could only withdraw and give the space to Xiao Chun and Zhou Hua. I must say that you have indeed surpassed my expectations. However, it doesn't matter. Only by killing someone like you can one truly feel proud. Today, you will definitely be a ghost under my sword. Holding the heavenly armament treasure sword in his hand, Zhou Hua coldly said. Hearing Zhou Hua's words, Xiao Chun said indifferently, "Noisy." Then he raised his Jian E/, an earth-level upper-grade martial skill, 3 layered waves. Child's play. Facing Xiao Chen's attack, Zhou Hua sneered. He didn't dodge, but also slashed out with his sword, also using an earth-level upper-grade martial skill. The 2 swords collided fiercely, and the space was directly torn apart. Then, the 2 attacks canceled each other out. No one hurt the other, but Xiao Chun took advantage of the opportunity just now and came in front of Zhou Hua. Stepping on a running tiger, Xiao Chun stabbed out with his sword and said calmly, "Let me see if your swordsmanship is disappointing. You are courting death." Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Zhou Hua's face darkened in the face of Xiao Chen's attack. He also stabbed out with his sword, and the 2 immediately engaged in a fierce battle. They didn't hold back at all, and their speed was extremely fast. Xiao Chun had the running tiger, but Zhou Hua had obviously learned a heaven-level upper-grade martial skill, so his speed wasn't inferior to Xiao Chen's. A heaven-level upper-grade martial skill was the celestial equal sex unique skill, and there was only one of it. However, in the Iron Sword sect, although a heaven-level upper-grade martial skill was also the sex unique skill, there was definitely more than one of it. This was the gap between the foundation of the 2 sides. Of course, the reason why the celestial equal sect was like this was because of Gu Qi himself. They didn't know why Gu Qi wanted to hide his cultivation realm. At the same time, Gu Qi still had many martial skills that he hadn't taken out. Otherwise, how could the celestial equal sect only have one heaven-level upper-grade martial skill? The two of them were locked in a fierce battle. As time passed, the disciples from the other sects began to lose their composure as they watched the two of them fight fiercely. Originally, they thought that Zhou Hua could easily take down Xiao Chun. However, judging from the current situation, Xiao Chun was obviously not simple. His strength wasn't any weaker than Zhou Hua's. This disciple of the Celestial Equal sect, named Xiao Chun, is really not simple. He can actually fight with Zhou Hua to this extent. Do you guys think that Zhou Hua went easy on him? Otherwise, why can't he take down Xiao Chun for so long? The battle was very anxious. There were even people who guessed that Zhou Hua went easy on him. However, in the face of this person's guess, he quickly attracted the disdain of his fellow disciples. Idiot! How can he go easy on him in such a battle? Do you think that this is an internal spar of the sect? Moreover, didn't you see Zhou Hua's murderous aura? With such a murderous aura, how can Zhou Hua go easy on him? That's right. In my opinion, Zhou Hua has made up his mind to kill Xiao Chun. Unfortunately, Xiao Chun isn't an ordinary person. Zhou Hua can't do anything to him for the time being. Sai, who is this Xiao Chun? Why haven't I heard of such a person in the Celestial Equal sect before? Isn't the strongest person in the Celestial Equal sect Gu Ling Yao? Everyone began to discuss one after another. At the same time, because of the fierce battle between Xiao Chun and Zhou Hua, the older generation experts of the various sects in the main hall of Tianfeng Xingzong had also turned their attention to this place. Their eyes were fixed on the light screen, watching the two people fighting fiercely on it. The older generation experts of the various sects had different expressions and thoughts. For example, the half-saint expert of the Iron Sword sect had an ugly expression. A quarter of an hour had passed, but Zhou Hua still couldn't take down Xiao Chun. This made the half-saint expert of the Iron Sword sect feel ashamed. After all, the Celestial Equal sect and the Iron Sword sect weren't on the same level. However, in the face of Xiao Chun, Zhou Hua, as one of the three great disciples of the Iron Sword sect, couldn't take down Xiao Chun for a long time. With a gloomy expression, the half-saint expert of the Iron Sword sect looked at Tian Guichuan and the others with an unkind smile on his face. Brother Tian, your Celestial Equal sect has produced a good seedling. Congratulations. Please collect, recommend, and vote. Chapter 551. Although he was congratulating, anyone could see that the half-saint expert of the Iron Sword sect was full of resentment. Tian Guochuan didn't panic at all when he heard the words of the half-saint expert of the Iron Sword sect. He also put on an act and replied with a smile, "Haha, you flatter me. My Tianqi sect disciple is still far from that." Tian Guochuan didn't show too much fear even in the face of a half-saint expert. The reason was very simple. It was now the selection period of the sage sects. At the same time, everyone was in Tianfeng Xingzong. Tian Guichuan didn't believe that the people of the Iron Sword sect would dare to act presumptuously in Tianfeng Xingzong. Seeing that Tian Guichuan wasn't moved at all, the half-saint expert of the Iron Sword sect's face became gloomier. Finally, he sneered and said, "Haha, interesting. But I hope your Tianqi sect disciple can hold on." Because of Xiao Chen's performance, the half-saint expert of the Iron Sword sect felt that he had lost face. At the same time, while the older generation experts of the various sects were watching the battle through the light screen, the battle between Xiao Chun and Zhou Hua was becoming more and more intense. Zhou Hua originally thought that he could easily defeat Xiao Chun, but after fighting for so long, Zhou Hua discovered that Xiao Chen's strength had far exceeded his expectations. It could be said that he had already used all his means, but he still couldn't do anything to Xiao Chun. This made Zhou Hua very anxious. Do I really have to use that move? Zhou Hua thought to himself, but he was a little conflicted. Zhou Hua indeed still had a trump card that he hadn't used. However, he had kept it for those guys from the three major sections. But now, was he going to use it against a mere disciple of the Tianqi sect? He was unwilling, but he had no other choice if he didn't use his trump card. After fighting for so long, Zhou Hua also knew that he couldn't do anything to Xiao Qian if he didn't use his trump card. After hesitating for a while, Zhou Hua finally decided to use his trump card. Killing intent flashed in his eyes as he sent Xiao Qian's sword flying. Zhou Hua took a step back and successfully pulled away from Xiao Qian. Xiao Qian, I will definitely kill you today, Zhou Hua said coldly as he looked at Xiao Qian with intense killing intent. Since he had decided to use his trump card, he had to kill Xiao Qian. Only then would he be able to vent the hatred in his heart. Xiao Qian smirked and ignored Zhou Hua as he sensed that the murderous aura around Zhou Hua had intensified. At the same time, he guessed that Zhou Hua was about to use his strongest move. Xiao Qian was also very curious about Zhou Hua's trump card. As one of the three great disciples of the Iron Sword sect, how powerful was Zhou Hua's trump card? Seeing that Xiao Qian's expression didn't change at all because of his killing intent, Zhou Hua became even angrier. He didn't say anything else, and the spiritual energy in his body soared into the sky. The sword in his hand was also surrounded by layers of flames, as if a fire dragon was coiling around the sword. Xiao Qian, you should be proud to be able to die under the fire dragon sword. Die, fire dragon sword! Zhou Hua shouted coldly as he slashed out with his sword. Immediately, a fire dragon swiftly attacked Xiao Qian. This sword was Zhou Hua's killing move. At the same time, it was also one of the few heaven-grade superior martial skills in the Iron Sword sect. Originally, Zhou Hua had reserved this move for the people from the three great sections. However, he had made an exception and used it on Xiao Qian. Seeing the fire dragon rushing towards Xiao Qian, Zhou Hua's face revealed a cold smile. A heaven-grade superior martial skill. It's over. Xiao Qian is completely done for. Seeing Zhou Hua's attack, the disciples from the various great sects whispered softly. Although they didn't directly face Zhou Hua's fire dragon sword, everyone still felt an irresistible might that constantly emanated from the fire dragon. Just based on the aura alone, they could determine that they wouldn't be able to block this sword. As expected of one of the three great disciples of the Iron Sword sect, his strength was indeed terrifying. Everyone thought that Xiao Qian was done for. It was impossible for him to block this sword. However, in the face of everyone's speculation, Xiao Qian sneered and said, "Is this your trump card? It's just SOSO." In the face of the terrifying fire dragon sword, Xiao Qian's answer was just SOSO. Hearing this, the killing intent in Zhou Hua's eyes intensified. He snorted and said, "Humph, you just try to win with words. Watch how I kill you with one sword." While speaking, the fire dragon had already arrived in front of Xiao Qian. Then it swallowed him in one gulp. He was directly swallowed by the fire dragon. Then, the raging flames seemed to burn the sky to ashes. It's over. Xiao Qian is definitely over. Seeing the scene, everyone thawed in their hearts. Including the experts of the older generation in Tianfeng Shengzong, they also thought that Xiao Qian was doomed. Seeing this result, the half-saint expert of the Iron Sword sect smiled. Obviously, he was in a good mood. On the other hand, Tian Guichuan and the others all looked worried. Their eyes were fixed on the light screen. However, it was a pity that they couldn't see Xiao Qian's figure at this time. Only a sea of fire was reflected in their eyes. After the fire dragon swallowed Xiao Qian, it turned into a sea of fire. At this time, Xiao Qian should have fallen in this sea of fire. Zhou Hua had absolute confidence in the fire dragon sword. He laughed loudly and said, "Ha, Xiao Qian, I've already said that it's your fortune to die under the fire dragon sword." Zhou Hua did not think that Xiao Qian could still be alive. The fire dragon sword was a heaven-grade superior martial skill. However, just as Zhou Hua could not help but laugh out loud, an indifferent voice came out from the sea of fire before he could even finish laughing. "Isn't it too early for you to be happy? Moreover, your fire dragon sword. TSK, TSK. It's not that great. At least, it's still a little lacking if you want to kill me." Along with the emergence of this voice, the smile on Zhou Hua's face instantly froze. Then, the sea of fire actually began to separate into two sides, forcibly creating a vacuum in the middle. The flames seemed to have been forcefully pushed aside by someone. As the sea of fire was parted, a young man in white stood proudly in the sky. His body was shining with intense golden light. This person was none other than Shao Chun, who had been swallowed by the fire dragon earlier. Facing Zhou Hua's fire dragon sword, Shao Chun naturally didn't hide his strength. He immediately displayed the tempered battle body. The tempered battle body was indeed extremely terrifying. Even in the face of a heaven-level upper-grade martial skill like the fire dragon sword, he wasn't afraid at all. The flames couldn't even enter Shao Chun's body. Under the protection of the tempered battle body, Shao Chun's clothes weren't affected by the flames. Impossible. How is this possible? Seeing Shao Chun appear, Zhou Hua and the Iron Sword sect's half-saint expert in the Heavenly Wind sacred ground exclaimed almost at the same time. Facing Zhou Hua's horror, Shao Chun slowly walked out of the sea of fire with a faint smile on his face. Nothing is impossible. I can only say that you're too weak. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 552. Shao Chun's tone was very indifferent, but Zhou Hua didn't react at all. At this time, Zhou Hua was completely stunned. He couldn't figure out how Shao Chun blocked his fire dragon sword. As a heaven-class high-grade martial skill, the power of the fire dragon sword naturally couldn't be underestimated. Even the ferocious tiger stampede was far inferior to the fire dragon sword in terms of attack power. After all, the ferocious tiger stampede was a movement martial skill, while the fire dragon sword was a pure offensive martial skill. Zhou Hua looked at Shao Chun as if he had seen a ghost. He couldn't believe his eyes. He had used the fire dragon sword without hesitation, but in the end, not to mention killing Shao Chun, he couldn't even hurt Shao Chun. Impossible! How is this possible? Zhou Hua's eyes were dull, and he kept repeating this sentence. In the face of Zhou Hua's shock, Shao Chun, who was currently shrouded in a rich golden light, showed a faint smile on his face. He slowly walked towards Zhou Hua and said as he walked, "It seems that your title as one of the top 3 disciples of the Iron Sword sect is just SOSO. The people who died here today should be from your Iron Sword sect." Shao Chun didn't deny that Zhou Hua's strength wasn't bad. With the strength that Zhou Hua had displayed, he should be comparable to Yang Heng and Chun Ju. Both of them were core disciples of Tianfeng Xingzong. In other words, Zhou Hua already had the strength of a core disciple of Tianfeng Xingzong. If it was in the past, it might be difficult for Shao Chun to defeat Zhou Hua. However, after the improvement in the 100 Refinements Valley, especially after obtaining the 100 Refinements Battle Body, Shao Chun's strength was no longer the same as before. Therefore, Zhou Hua was no longer enough in front of Shao Chun. Shao Chun's voice was very calm, without the slightest hint of threat. It sounded as if he was talking about a very ordinary matter. However, it was precisely because of Shao Chun's attitude that Zhou Hua and the surrounding disciples were shocked. The calmer he was, the more it proved that Shao Chun wasn't joking. Killed Zhou Hua and the disciples of the Iron Sword sect? Was he crazy? The Iron Sword sect is one of the top 3 sects in Tianfeng Prefecture, second only to Tianfeng Xingzong. How dare he? Crazy. This Shao Chun must be crazy. After killing Zhou Hua and the disciples of the Iron Sword sect, even the Celestial Equals sect won't be able to protect him. Upon hearing Shao Chun's words, the disciples of the various sects all spoke out in disbelief. At the same time, Zhou Hua, who was at the center of it all, suddenly burst into laughter after recovering from his initial shock. Shao Chun was very arrogant. "Ha, what did you say? You want to kill me and all the disciples of the Iron Sword sect? Ha ha, Shao Chun, I admit that your strength is beyond my imagination, but so what? Do you really think you can kill me? I can't do anything to you, but do you think you can do anything to me?" Shao Chun's words were like a big joke in Zhou Hua's eyes. Not to mention whether Shao Chun dared to kill him. Zhou Hua was confident that even if he couldn't kill Shao Chun, escaping wouldn't be a problem. He couldn't kill Shao Chun, but Shao Chun couldn't kill Zhou Hua either. Hearing this, Xiao Chun smiled and didn't say anything more. He took a step forward and directly used the tiger stampede. His whole body was like a fierce tiger coming down from the mountain. In an instant, he crossed hundreds of meters and appeared in front of Zhou Hua. With a calm expression, Xiao Chun directly slashed out with his sword and used the sky sword shadow. Everything happened in an instant. When Xiao Chun slashed out with his sword, the smile on Zhou Hua's face froze instantly. Compared to the previous attack, Xiao Chen's sword was many times stronger. Zhou Hua didn't expect Xiao Chun to have hidden his strength. But now, Zhou Hua didn't even have time to speak. He didn't dare to hesitate in the slightest. With a sidestep, Zhou Hua dodged the sword by a hair's breadth. However, even though he successfully dodged the first sword, this was only the beginning. At this moment, Xiao Chen's attack had already struck Zhou Hua like a violent storm. At this moment, Xiao Chun didn't hold back at all. The cultivation of the Dao confirmation realm fully erupted. At the same time, the tempered battle body was also pushed to the limit. With the powerful physique bestowed by the tempered battle body, Xiao Chun completely crushed Zhou Hua head-on. The situation changed in the blink of an eye. The two of them who were evenly matched a moment ago were now in a one-sided situation. Zhou Hua was completely suppressed by Xiao Chun. Looking at the completely one-sided battle, the surrounding disciples were once again stunned. Anyone could see that Xiao Chun didn't use his full strength in the previous battle. Otherwise, Zhou Hua would have been defeated a long time ago. It was laughable that Zhou Hua thought that Xiao Chun couldn't do anything to him. In just a short time, Zhou Hua was seriously injured. His clothes were stained with blood and his hair was messy. He no longer had the imposing manner of being one of the top 3 disciples of the Iron Sword sect. Xiao Chun, do you really want to become enemies with our Iron Sword sect? At this point, Zhou Hua also knew that he wasn't Xiao Chen's match. He struggled desperately and shouted angrily. There was nothing he could do. He was far weaker than Xiao Chun. Zhou Hua also felt a strong killing intent from Xiao Chun. Although he didn't dare to believe it, he had to admit that Xiao Chun really wanted to kill him. As such, Zhou Hua could only bring up the Iron Sword sect in an attempt to make Xiao Chun show mercy. However, Xiao Chun didn't seem to care about Zhou Hua's words. His attack didn't slow down. He fiercely slashed out with his sword and successfully knocked Zhou Hua's sword away. Then, without stopping, Xiao Chun stabbed the ink dragon sword at lightning speed, aiming for Zhou Hua's heart. The sword was very fast. At the same time, Zhou Hua was also instantly enveloped by a dense aura of death as the sword approached. His expression changed greatly, and his eyes filled with fear. He wanted to speak, but before he could say a word, Xiao Chen's sword pierced through his heart. Xiao! There wasn't the slightest hesitation throughout the entire process. Xiao Chun clearly didn't have any scruples about killing Zhou Hua. He simply killed Zhou Hua with a single sword strike. Seeing Zhou Hua's corpse fall from the sky, the surrounding disciples couldn't help but gulp. They all had the same thought. Xiao Chun was definitely a madman. He actually killed the 3 great disciples of the Iron Sword sect without any hesitation. One must know that the Iron Sword sect was one of the 3 great sects of the Sky Wind Prefecture. Zhou Hua's death stunned everyone present, including the disciples of the Celestial Equal sect and the Fire God sect. At this moment, they all looked at Xiao Chun in horror. However, this was only the beginning of their shock. After a moment, Xiao Chen's indifferent voice sounded from the sky. Iron Sword sect disciples, kill without mercy. Begging for collection, begging for votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 553. Kill all the disciples of the Iron Sword sect. After Xiao Chun said that, the disciples around him had no idea how to describe this guy who had no inhibitions. The leaders of the various sects exclaimed in unison, "Lunatic! This guy is definitely a lunatic. Does he really want to slaughter all the disciples of the Iron Sword sect?" After killing Zhou Hua, Xiao Chun still had no intention of stopping. Facing the leaderless disciples of the Iron Sword sect, Xiao Chun still had no intention of letting them go. The reason was simple. The disciples of the Iron Sword sect didn't let the disciples of the Celestial Equals sect go either. In the battle earlier, several disciples of the Celestial Equals sect were slain by the disciples of the Iron Sword sect. Since you want me dead, I naturally won't let you live. This was Xiao Qin's principle of doing things. As soon as Xiao Qin spoke, he took the lead and attacked the disciples of the Iron Sword sect. At the same time, the disciples of the Celestial Equals sect gnashed their teeth and pounced on the disciples of the Iron Sword sect like hungry wolves. Xiao Chun was the leader of the Celestial Equals sect. Now that they were in the Abyss Prison Secret Realm, Xiao Qin's words were orders, and the disciples of the Celestial Equals sect had to obey. Therefore, even though everyone knew the consequences of killing the disciples of the Iron Sword sect, there was no reason for them to back down since Xiao Chun had already taken action. After all, they were all disciples of the same sect, and were a whole. Watching as Xiao Chun led the disciples of the Celestial Equals sect to massacre the disciples of the Iron Sword sect, the disciples of the Fire God sect, led by Su Luo, were shocked. After a few moments, Su Luo gritted his teeth and bellowed, "Attack! Senior brother Su Luo, those are the disciples of the Iron Sword sect. If we attack, I'm afraid." Su Luo finally decided to attack. Upon hearing Su Luo's command, a disciple of the Fire God sect said with an ugly expression, "I know, but does it make a difference whether we attack or not? Now that we're on the same boat as the Celestial Equals sect, do you think the Iron Sword sect will let us off even if we don't make a move now? Since that's the case, we might as well go all the way." Hearing the disciple's words, Su Luo coldly replied. As he spoke, Su Luo charged towards the Iron Sword sect disciples. Previously, he had already joined forces with the Celestial Equals sect. Furthermore, Su Luo also knew that everything that happened here was seen by the experts of the various sections. It was simply impossible to hide it from them. Therefore, there was no point in making a move now. In that case, why not kill a few more disciples of the Iron Sword sect? Along with Su Luo's command, the disciples of the Fire God sect also joined the battle. Facing the siege of the two major sects, the disciples of the Iron Sword sect instantly fell into a disadvantageous position. It could even be said that they didn't even have a chance to retaliate. It was a completely one-sided massacre. Looking at everything before them, the disciples of the various sects no longer had the intention to watch the show. Who would have thought that things would turn out like this? No one knew who retreated first, but the disciples of the various sects chose to retreat one after another. The Celestial Equals sect, especially that guy named Xiao Chun, was definitely a lunatic who didn't care about anything. It was best to stay away from him. Who knew if he would go crazy and kill all the disciples of the surrounding sects? The disciples of the various sects retreated one after another. At the same time, the experts of the various sects who were in the main hall of Tianfeng Shengzong also had different expressions on their faces. Especially the experts of the Iron Sword sect, their faces were already ashen. The leading half-saint expert of the Iron Sword sect had a gloomy expression on his face. He stared at the light screen. After a long while, the half-saint expert turned his head to look at Tian Guichuan and the others. His eyes flickered with intense, killing intent as he spoke. "What a Celestial Equals sect. It seems that I have really underestimated you." Although he didn't say anything directly, everyone knew that the Iron Sword sect would definitely not let this matter rest. Facing the threat of the half-saint expert of the Iron Sword sect, Tian Guichuan's eyes revealed a trace of seriousness. However, at this moment, in front of the various sects of the Tianfeng prefecture, he naturally couldn't show it. He pretended to be calm as he spoke. What? Could it be that the Iron Sword sect wants to take revenge? Don't forget that this is the selection of the Sage sect. Everything has to follow the rules of the Sage sect. It was impossible to confront the Iron Sword sect head-on, so Tian Guichuan could only bring out the rules of the Sage sect. Just as Tian Guichuan's voice fell, the two half-saint elders of Tianfeng Shengzong who had been sitting on the main seats, who had been silent all this time, spoke up faintly. "That's right. No one is allowed to take revenge on anything that happens during the selection of the Sage Sect. Otherwise, the Sage Sect will not sit idly by. It had to be said that the Tian Fengsheng Zone was relatively fair. At least, the two half-saint elders of the Sage Sect didn't favor the Iron Sword Sect. Hearing the half-saint elder's words, the half-saint expert of the Iron Sword Sect looked even more unsightly. However, he didn't say anything else. He also knew very well that the rules of the Tian Fengsheng Zone couldn't be violated. Otherwise, there would only be one outcome: destruction. However, even if they couldn't do it openly, wouldn't the Iron Sword Sect use underhanded methods? Staring at Xiao Chun on the light screen, the half-saint expert of the Iron Sword Sect didn't weaken in the slightest. He said coldly in his heart, "Little bastard, even if you enter the Tian Fengsheng Zone, the Iron Sword Sect still has 100 ways to kill you." He didn't know that the Iron Sword Sect's killing intent towards him had reached the extreme. After a fierce battle, none of the dozens of disciples of the Iron Sword Sect survived. They were all killed by Xiao Chun and the others. After destroying a prison city and killing dozens of disciples of the Iron Sword Sect, Xiao Chun and the others could be said to have gained a lot from this battle. After counting the points, Xiao Chun took the biggest share and distributed the rest of the points to the other participating disciples of the Tianqi sect. After dividing the points and resting for an hour, Su Luo took the initiative to leave with the disciples of the Fire God sect. Perhaps because he had seen Xiao Chen's strength, Su Luo's attitude was very respectful. In the face of Su Luo's departure, Xiao Chun didn't stop him. He just looked at the warriors of the Tianqian continent and gave them a few words of advice. Then, the people of the two sects parted ways. It was also when the people of the two sects parted ways that the news of Xiao Chun killing Zhou Hua quickly spread in this area. The disciples of the sects who had escaped before spread the news as fast as they could. At this time, all the disciples of the various sects in this area knew that a madman had appeared in the Tianqi sect. His name was Xiao Chun. Not only did he dare to kill Zhou Hua, but he also slaughtered dozens of disciples of the Iron Sword sect. In just half a day, Xiao Chen's name had spread in this area. It wouldn't be long before the entire Hell secret realm knew of Xiao Chen's name. Chapter 554. News of Xiao Chen's deeds quickly spread within the Darkness Prison's secret realm. Although it had yet to spread to the entire Darkness Prison's secret realm, it was only a matter of time. By now, many disciples knew that Xiao Chen's strength was not any weaker than the top disciples of the Steel Sword sect and the other two sections. At the same time, he was a fearless person who even dared to kill Zhou Hua. As such, there was probably no one in the entire Darkness Prison secret realm that Xiao Chun did not dare to kill. When the disciples of the various sects heard of this news, their first reaction was to list Xiao Chun in a list of people that they could not afford to offend. Without any exaggeration, the fear that the disciples of the various sects had for Xiao Chun had already surpassed that of the top disciples of the three sections. The outside world was abuzz because of this matter. However, Xiao Chun did not know about it. Of course, he did not purposely inquire about it. Ever since the battle that day, Xiao Chun led the disciples of the Celestial Equals sect and the Fire God sect separately and continued to sweep through the Darkness Prison's secret realm. The Glory sect selection lasted for a month. Now, 7 days had passed. However, within these 7 days, Xiao Chun and the rest had reaped great rewards. Especially after killing Zhou Hua and the other disciples of the Steel Sword sect, they were filled to the brim. After all, the Steel Sword sect was one of the 3 sects of the Sky Sword sect. Naturally, their disciples were not ordinary people. To be honest, without Xiao Chun, even if the Celestial Equals sect and the Fire God sect joined forces, they would definitely not be a match for the Steel Sword sect. Because of their bountiful rewards, everyone was in a good mood for the next few days. Coupled with the fact that they had killed a few waves of death row prisoners and demonic beasts, their points could be said to be at the top. As they walked towards the depths of the dark prison hidden realm, The disciples of the various sects knew that 80% of the prisoners and demonic beasts in the dark prison hidden realm were gathered in the depths of the dark prison hidden realm. There are many large prison cities there. Therefore, if they wanted to obtain more points, they had to go deeper into the depths of the dark prison hidden realm. It wasn't just Xiao, Chun, and the others. The disciples from the other great sects were also rushing towards the inner region of the abyss secret realm from all directions. They would meet each other there. When that time came, they wouldn't just be hunting death row prisoners and demonic beasts. The battles between the disciples of the various sects would truly erupt. While Xiao Chan was leading the group towards the core area, in another direction, Gu Lingyao and the others who had just entered the core area of the dark prison secret realm were surrounded by the disciples of the three sections. When they first entered the dark prison hidden realm, Gu Lingyao and Xiao Chan were randomly sent to two different directions. As the two strongest disciples of the Tianqi sect, Xiao Chan had gathered a group of disciples of the Tianqi sect. Naturally, Gu Lingyao did the same. At this moment, there were less than 40 disciples of the Tianqi sect around Gu Lingyao. The number was slightly more than the number around Xiao Chun. At the same time, people like Mu Feng, Chao He, and the others were also following Gu Lingyao. Originally, there shouldn't be any problems with such a lineup. However, Gu Lingyao and the others were now surrounded by hundreds of disciples of the three sections. Just like Xiao Chun, Gu Lingyao had originally planned to lead the group to the core area. However, who would have thought that the group would be blocked by the disciples of the three sects as soon as they entered the core area? Looking at the leading disciples of the three sects in front of her, Gu Lingyao's face darkened. She shouted coldly, "What are you trying to do?" The disciples of the Qingyang sect, Whitewood sect, and Baleful Yin Pavilion had joined forces to surround Gu Lingyao and the others. Upon hearing this, a disciple in a black robe from the Qingyang sect slowly walked out. Looking at this person, Gu Lingyao's expression turned even colder. She was no stranger to this person. Even Xiao Chen knew him. He was the young sect master of the Qingyang sect, Hua Zhe. During the two sects' grand meeting in Danyang County, Xiao Chun had fought with Hua Zhe. In the end, it had ended with Xiao Chen's victory. At this moment, Hua Zhe stepped in front of Gu Lingyao and said with a faint smile, "Junior sister Lingyao, what a coincidence." Hua Zhe, just spit it out. Stop pretending. Gu Lingyao didn't give Hua Zhe any face in the face of his smile and shouted coldly. She couldn't even look at Hua Zhe. In response, the smile on Hua Zhe's face instantly froze. His face quickly darkened as he said coldly to Gu Lingyao, "You're really shameless. Since that's the case, I'll be straightforward. First, hand over all your points. Second, there's a prison city ahead. Help us break the city gate. How about it? Is that a problem?" It could be said that his face changed in an instant. A second ago, he was smiling, but in the next second, he was overflowing with killing intent. Feeling the killing intent emitted from Hua Zhe, Gu Lingyao's face also darkened. However, before she could speak, the leading disciple from the Whitewood sect had already come to Hua Zhe's side and spoke first. "Junior sister Lingyao, don't worry. We won't hurt you. We just want the brothers of the Tianqi sect to do us a small favor." As he spoke, the eyes of the Whitewood sect's disciple were filled with lust. Gu Lingyao's beauty was actually famous in the Tianfeng mansion. Even the direct disciples of the Tianfeng Shengzong coveted her. He had already said very bluntly that he wouldn't hurt Gu Lingyao. However, the other disciples of the Tianqi sect could only be reduced to cannon fodder. In fact, the reason why the Qingyang sect, Whitewood sect, and Malevolent Yin Pavilion blocked the path of the Tianqi sect was very simple. Firstly, they wanted to snatch their points. Secondly, they needed them to be cannon fodder to attack a prison city. There was a large prison city not far from here. After a preliminary investigation, Hua Zhe and the others were sure that the number of death row prisoners and demonic beasts in the prison city was no less than 1,000 people. With such a number of prison cities, it was already considered a large prison city. To take down such a prison city, the Qingyang sect and the other two sects would definitely not be able to do it alone. Moreover, even if they succeeded, the Qingyang sect and the other two sects would definitely suffer heavy losses. They didn't want their own sect's disciples to suffer too many casualties. Since they had coincidentally encountered the people of the Tianqi sect, there was no doubt that the people of the Tianqi sect would naturally become cannon fodder. Although it was said that they were going to attack the prison city, to put it bluntly, they were just sending the people of the Tianqi sect to their deaths to attract the enemy's firepower. Gu Lingyao's face was ice cold as she faced Hua Zhe and the others. She naturally knew what these guys were up to. However, Gu Lingyao simply had no choice in the current situation. As though they could tell that Gu Lingyao wouldn't agree so easily, Hua Zhe and the others didn't waste any time. With a wave of his hand, Hua Zhe shouted, "Do it! Take down these guys first." Chapter 555. Following Hua Zhe's command, the disciples of the three major sects took action at the same time. Although the disciples of the Celestial Equals sect resisted with all their might, the final outcome did not change. The disciples of the Celestial Equals sect were quickly captured. All the disciples of the Celestial Equals sect, including Gu Lingyao, were captured. Gu Lingyao was facing Hua Zhe and the other two by herself. As a result, even though Gu Lingyao's strength was decent, she was not a match for Hua Zhe and the other two at the same time. Directly sealing Gu Lingyao's cultivation, the leading disciple of the Whitewood sect said with a smile, "Haha, junior sister Lingyao, calm down. Don't worry, I won't hurt you. When the time comes, I'll even give you some points." Facing Gu Lingyao, the leading disciple of the Whitewood sect did not hide his desire. Hua Zhe was naturally unhappy about this. He also had a deep admiration for Gu Lingyao. However, Hua Zhe knew that the current situation was not the time to fall out with the Whitewood sect. Forcefully suppressing the anger in his heart, Hua Zhe said in a deep voice, "Take their points. Let's set off as soon as possible." The disciples of the three sects quickly took away the points of the Celestial Equals sect. In fact, it was very easy to snatch these points because they were recorded using tokens. As long as 2 tokens were injected with spiritual energy, the other party's points could be snatched in an instant. Therefore, the disciples of the three sects were very satisfied as they escorted the disciples of the Celestial Equals sect away. They rushed towards the prison city, not far away. Gu Lingyao was guarded by Hua Zhe and the other two. The three of them did not plan on sending Gu Lingyao to her death. This time, the people who were used as cannon fodder were only Chao He, Mu Feng, and the other disciples of the Celestial Equals sect. Being escorted by the disciples of the three sects towards the prison city, Mu Feng was thinking of countermeasures along the way. However, no matter how he thought about it, he could not think of any good ideas. Looking at the current situation, it was almost impossible to escape from the encirclement of the disciples of the three sections. After traveling for about 2 hours, they stopped in a dense forest. This place was only a dozen or so li away from the prison city. Hua Zhe looked at the 2 leading disciples of the Whitewood sect and the Dark Fiend Pavilion and said in a deep voice, "Let's go. Let's do as we agreed. Let the disciples of the Celestial Equals sect rush up first. We'll follow closely behind and launch an attack to take down this prison city in one fell swoop." How about it? They already had a plan. Hearing Hua Zhe's words, the 2 leaders of the Whitewood sect and the Dark Fiend Pavilion nodded. Yes, let's do that. With a plan in mind, the 3 of them quickly took action. First, they arranged for a disciple to be in charge of guarding Gu Lingyao. At this time, Gu Lingyao's cultivation had been sealed, so any disciple would have no problem guarding her. After dealing with Gu Lingyao, Hua Zhe and the other 2 arrived before Mu Feng and the other Celestial Unity sect disciples. With a sneer on his face, Hua Zhe said, "Friends of the Celestial Equals sect, there's a prison city in front of us. Just as I said earlier, we need to attack this prison city, so I hope that everyone can help us." All right, everyone can attack now. After hearing Hua Zhe's words, a disciple of the Celestial Equals sect immediately stood out and shouted angrily, "Huaze, you want us to be your cannon fodder? Dream on." "Oh, is that so? All right then. Since you don't want to help, there's no point in keeping you alive," Huaze said with a cold smile in the face of the Celestial Equal Sect disciples' angry shouts. With that, a disciple of the Qingyang sect attacked and killed the Celestial Equal Sect disciples who had jumped out. Without any intention of holding back, Huaze gave the Celestial Equal Sect disciples a very simple choice. They could either obediently be cannon fodder, or all of them would die here. After 3 Celestial Equal Sect disciples were killed in a row, Huaze continued to say with a smile, "Now, do you want to be cannon fodder, or do you want to die here? If you become cannon fodder, you may still have a chance to live. If you still want to resist stubbornly, then I can only say sorry." Hearing Huaze's words, the Celestial Equal Sect disciples were filled with anger. However, they had no other choice. Indeed, they would still have a chance to live if they were cannon fodder. However, they had no chance of winning against the disciples of the 3 sections. Moreover, Gu Lingyao had also fallen into the hands of Huaze and the other 2. There was no other way. In the end, Chao He had to step forward bravely and suppress the anger in their hearts. Now, they could only do as Huaze said. It was impossible to let the Celestial Equal Sect disciples die here. Furthermore, they couldn't ignore Gu Lingyao's safety. Therefore, under Chao He's appearance, the Celestial Equal Sect disciples headed towards the prison city not far away. With the Celestial Equal Sect disciples taking the lead, the disciples of the other 3 sects followed closely behind. Soon, everyone arrived at the prison city one after another. There was no chance of escaping along the way because Huaze and the other disciples of the 3 sects had been following closely behind them. When they arrived at the prison city, Chao He took a deep breath and whispered to the Celestial Equal Sect disciples beside her, "Senior brothers and junior brothers, protect yourselves first. As long as a fight breaks out, we will have a chance. Remember not to fight recklessly with these death row prisoners." The Celestial Equal Sect disciples knew Huaze's goal. Therefore, they naturally wouldn't let them do as they wished. Although they had already become cannon fodder, the Celestial Equal Sect disciples wouldn't take the initiative to fight recklessly with the death row prisoners. Hearing Chao He's words, everyone nodded slightly and rushed towards the prison city at the same time. The Celestial Equal Sect disciples would only have a chance if a fight broke out. Just as the Celestial Equal Sect disciples launched their attack on the prison city, over 1,000 death row prisoners rushed out from the prison city. The leader was a Dao Gate Realm death row prisoner. Looking at the Celestial Equal Sect disciples rushing over, the death row prisoner's eyes flickered with intense killing intent. A mocking smile hung on the corner of his mouth as he said, "Are these sect disciples courting death? They actually dare to attack the prison city with just a few dozen of them. Haha, brothers, kill them for me." The death row prisoners didn't know that Chao He and the others were cannon fodder. Therefore, their first reaction was naturally to fight when they saw Chao He and the others attack. Following the death row prisoner leader's order, the 2 sides soon engaged in a fierce battle. They didn't want to fight the death row prisoners, but all of this wasn't something the Celestial Equal Sect disciples could decide. Soon, the 2 sides were engaged in a fierce battle. As cannon fodder, the Celestial Equal Sect disciples bore the full brunt of the 1,000 death row prisoners' firepower. At this moment, Huaze and the other disciples of the 3 sects who had been following behind saw an opportunity and rushed out. Huaze and the other 2 leaders shouted coldly, "Kill! The 3 of us will take down the death row prisoner leader. The rest of you, kill the other death row prisoners and take down the prison city in one fell swoop." Huaze and the other 2 leaders of the Dao Validation Realm disciples rushed towards the Dao Gate Realm death row prisoner. Seeing over 100 sect disciples rushing out, the death row prisoner leader's expression changed drastically. Damn it, these guys are just bait. Chapter 556. The Dao Gate Realm Death Row Prisoner instantly reacted to the sudden appearance of over 100 sect disciples. The dozens of celestial equal sect disciples who had rushed up earlier were merely bait to attract the firepower of the numerous death row prisoners. Using those dozens of people as scapegoats, Huazhe and the rest would rush out. As a result, the death row prisoners' formation was already messed up. It wasn't realistic for them to deal with Huazhe and the other sect disciples. They could only take the opportunity to kill them. The battle was in complete chaos. The death row prisoners weren't prepared for the sudden attack of the three sect disciples. In addition, the death row prisoners were fighting fiercely with the celestial equal sect disciples. Soon, they were separated by the three sect disciples and killed one by one. Good move. I thought that we were already heartless people. I didn't expect that you handsome sect disciples would be even more ruthless than us. I've finally witnessed it today. The leader of the death row prisoners, who was already engaged in a fierce battle with Huazhe and the other two, laughed loudly at this moment. The leader of the death row prisoners' words were filled with a thick sense of mockery. Everyone in the world had said that these death row prisoners who had been locked up in the dark prison secret realm were utterly devoid of conscience. However, who would have thought that compared to them, how much better could those good-looking disciples from the sects be? It was just like what Huazhe and the others were doing right now. They were using the disciples of the celestial equal sect as cannon fodder to attract the firepower of the prisoners. Even though this plan was successful, it was definitely a disaster for the disciples of the celestial equal sect. Take a look. In just an hour, only 16 people were left from the dozens of disciples of the celestial equal sect. What kind of casualties was that? It could be said that the three sects disciples won this battle by stepping on the corpses of the celestial equal sect disciples. The celestial equal sect disciples were their human shields. Hearing the death row prisoner leader's words, Huazhe and the other two's faces sank. Were they despicable? There was no doubt about it. But as sect disciples, they couldn't allow others to call them despicable, especially the death row prisoners in the darkness prison secret realm. You're courting death. Today, you'll be the death row prisoner. Huazhe shouted coldly. His attacks became more and more ferocious. At the same time, the two leading disciples of the Whitewood sect and the Fiend Pavilion did the same. Although Huazhe's group was at the Dao Vindication realm, they were an entire realm weaker than the leader. However, one shouldn't forget that the three of them were true monarchs. Moreover, they had heavenly soldiers to help them. In comparison, the leader could only fight with his bare hands, so he was naturally no match for the three of them. The prisoners on death row in the dark prison secret realm, regardless of their cultivation base, did not have any weapons. They had been confiscated by the Tianfeng Shengzong long ago. This was also one of the important reasons why the disciples of the sect dared to fight against the prisoners on death row who had higher cultivation bases than them. If these death row prisoners also had the help of the heavenly soldiers, then with the difference of a large realm, the sect disciples might not dare to fight with these death row prisoners. Gradually, he fell into a disadvantageous position. Many wounds appeared on his body, and blood dyed his tattered clothes red. However, before he died, the death row prisoner leader laughed loudly. What a joke. Everyone says that us death row prisoners are devoid of conscience. But who dares to say that you sect disciples are better than us? In comparison, us death row prisoners at least have the courage to admit what we've done. As for you, each and every one of you is dignified. In front of others, you bemoan the state of the universe and pity the fate of mankind. But behind the scenes, the things you do are 100 times crueler and more sinister than us. What a joke, what a joke. Nonsense. Die. Huazhe shouted coldly in the face of the death row prisoner leader's laughter. Then, the three of them attacked at the same time, killing the death row prisoner leader with a single blow. After killing the leader, the following matter was naturally simple. With the addition of Huazhe and the other two, the other death row prisoners were simply unable to resist and were quickly slaughtered. While Huazhe and the other disciples were slaughtering the surviving death row prisoners, a secret order came from behind them. A Whitewood sect disciple was left behind to guard Gu Lingyao. However, at this time, a total of 60 Iron Sword sect disciples appeared in front of Gu Lingyao and the Whitewood sect disciple. Leading them was a young man and a young woman. The young man had a dignified appearance and wore a cyan robe. The young woman had a very charming appearance, especially her eyes, which seemed to be able to hook one's soul, making one involuntarily lose themselves in them. This young man and woman could definitely be considered as a golden couple. However, facing these two people, the Whitewood sect disciple was scared silly. His entire body fell to the ground, and he said in a daze, "Jade White, Color Glass, Yubai was the young man's name, and Lu Li was the young woman's name." The two of them were the three great disciples of the Iron Sword sect, who were equally famous as Zhou Hua. Who would have thought that they would actually meet the other two great disciples of the Iron Sword sect here? Lu Li covered her mouth and chuckled in front of the Whitewood sect disciple, who had completely fallen into fear. Hee, if it isn't the little princess of the Celestial Equal sect, junior sister Gu Lingyao. Lu Li's smile could be said to be extremely charming. However, as long as one was familiar with her, they would know that although this girl was born beautiful, she had a heart of snakes and scorpions. Her methods were so vicious that many of the younger generation of the Heavenly Wind Mansion would turn pale at the mention of her. Celestial Equal sect, I've worn out iron shoes but still couldn't find you. Following Lu Li's words, Yubai also chuckled softly. While saying that, Yubai pointed his finger and directly beheaded the Whitewood sect disciple. Then, he came before Gu Lingyao and said in an indifferent tone, "Gu Lingyao, that good-for-nothing junior brother of mine, Zhou Hua, died in the hands of someone from your Celestial Equal sect named Xiao Chun. Now that you've fallen into the hands of our Iron Sword sect, do you think Xiao Chun will come and save you?" Upon hearing Yubai's words, Gu Lingyao's expression changed. She wanted to berate him, but Yubai had already stood up and interrupted her. "Whoever dares to kill the people of my Iron Sword sect will have to pay the price. With you around, it saved me the trouble of looking for Xiao Chun. I'd like to see if he will drag out an ignoble existence or throw himself into a trap for the sake of being from the same sect. Let's take him away." After saying that, Gu Lingyao was taken away by the disciples of the Iron Sword sect. Not only that, but the disciples of the three sects, including the Qingyang sect, who were cleaning up the battlefield, were also quickly encountered by the Iron Sword sect. Needless to say, all the points were snatched by the Iron Sword sect. Not only that, but the dozen or so disciples of the Celestial Equal sect who were lucky enough to survive also fell into the hands of the Iron Sword sect. One day later, the Iron Sword sect announced that they would give Xiao Chun 3 days to come to a place called Black Cloud Mountain in the core area of the Abyss Prison Secret Realm. If Xiao Chun didn't show up, the Iron Sword sect would kill Gu Lingyao and the dozen or so disciples of the Celestial Equal sect. Chapter 557. Gu Lingyao and the other surviving disciples of the Tianqi sect had fallen into the hands of the Iron Sword sect. As for Hua Zhe and the other disciples of the three sects, the points they had earned this time had naturally been mercilessly snatched away by the Iron Sword sect. Even though they were an alliance of three sects, they were still powerless in front of the group of Iron Sword sect disciples led by Yu Bai and Lu Li. Therefore, even though they were extremely unwilling, Hua Zhe and the others still gave all their points to the Iron Sword sect. Snatching the points of Hua Zhe and the others was just a matter of convenience for the Iron Sword sect. Their real goal was to kill Xiao Chun. It was also because of this that the Iron Sword sect brought the disciples of the Tianqi sect to the Black Cloud Mountain. The news had already been released. After hearing this news, the disciples of the various sects who had already entered the core area of the Black Prison Secret Realm turned their gazes to the Black Cloud Mountain. Now that the little princess of the Tianqi sect, Gu Lingyao, and more than 10 disciples of the Tianqi sect had fallen into the hands of the Iron Sword sect, Xiao Chun could either fight the Iron Sword sect head-on or be a coward. Of course, Many people thought that Xiao Chan would definitely not dare to show up this time. After all, the Black Cloud Mountain this time was guarded by the two great disciples of the Iron Sword sect. Moreover, among the three great disciples of the Iron Sword sect, Yu Bai and Lu Li were publicly acknowledged to be stronger than Zhou Hua. Xiao Qin's chances of winning against the two of them at the same time were close to zero. Perhaps because they wanted to witness this battle with their own eyes, many disciples of the various sects began to rush to the Black Cloud Mountain after hearing the news. They all wanted to see if Xiao Chan would dare to show up in such a desperate situation. In just a short day, the disciples of several sects had gathered around the Black Cloud Mountain. These people gathered together and waited for Xiao Chen's arrival. Just as the disciples of the various sects were paying attention to the development of the situation, unexpectedly, the people from the Demon Evil Temple and the White Mist sect also appeared on the Black Cloud Mountain. The appearance of the disciples from these two sects quickly stirred a commotion. It was unexpected that the Devil's Evil Temple and the White Mist sect were also paying attention to this big battle that could possibly erupt. Look, the people from Demon Evil Temple and White Mist sect have arrived as well, someone exclaimed. The two great sects appeared at the Black Cloud Mountain one after another. However, they clearly had no intention of interfering in this matter. They only watched from afar. It was obvious that they only wanted to be spectators. Almost everyone in the Dark Prison Secret Realm was focused on Black Cloud Mountain. At the same time, Xiao Chun, who had also received the news, was also rushing towards Black Cloud Mountain. He already knew what had happened to Guling Yao and the others. First, they were captured by Hua Zhe and the other disciples of the three sections. They were used as cannon fodder to attack Prison City and suffered heavy casualties. Then, they were captured by the people from the Iron Sword sect to force him to show himself. No anger could be seen on his face. He was very calm. On the way, Mu Feng revealed a worried expression and said to Xiao Chun, "Brother Xiao Chun, are we going to Black Cloud Mountain like this?" This time, the Iron Sword sect has already prepared. Moreover, I heard that Yu Bai and Lu Li's battle strength is above Zhou Hua's. So what? Since there are people who want to die, I will naturally fulfill their wish. Hearing Mu Feng's words, Xiao Chun replied indifferently. After hearing this news, Xiao Chun rushed towards Black Cloud Mountain without any hesitation. There was not the slightest fear in his heart. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. On the third day, the disciples of the various sects around Black Cloud Mountain began to whisper to each other. On the mountain where the Devil Evil Temple was located, more than 30 disciples of the Devil Evil Temple gathered together. The leader of the group was one of the three great disciples of the Devil Evil Temple. At this moment, a disciple was respectfully speaking to him. "Senior, do you think that Xiao Chun will come? It's already the third day. Could it be that he is afraid and does not dare to come? It's normal that he doesn't dare to come. This time, the Iron Sword sect is out in full force. Although Xiao Chan killed Zhou Hua, if he dares to show himself this time, he will definitely die." Hearing this disciple's words, another disciple of the Devil Evil Temple said. The two of them were whispering to each other. Only the leader of the three great disciples of the Devil Evil Temple had a faint smile on his face. After a long while, he finally opened his mouth and said, "I feel that this Xiao Chan should not be someone who is afraid of death. To be honest, I am somewhat interested in this Xiao Chan." As he spoke, the gaze of the three great disciples of the Devil Evil Temple looked towards the peak of Black Cloud Mountain. There, Yu Bai and Lu Li were sitting cross-legged with their eyes closed. Behind them was a group of disciples of the Heavenly Chi sect. Their eyes revealed a trace of light. Not only the Devil Evil Temple, the leader of the White Mist sect also looked towards Black Cloud Mountain. They were all waiting for Xiao Chun to appear. Others believed that Xiao Chun would appear after going into seclusion. However, the two of them believed that Xiao Chun should not be someone who was afraid of death. If Xiao Chun was such a person, how could he have killed Zhou Hua? Time slowly passed. After an unknown amount of time, the sun gradually set in the west. The blood-red sunset sprinkled on the earth. At this moment, Yu Bai and Lu Li, who had been waiting for 3 days, opened their eyes at the same time. Yu Bai took the lead and stood up. He looked towards Gu Ling Yao and the other disciples of the Heavenly Qi sect and said, "It seems that Xiao Chan has already given up on you. A scoundrel. Since that is the case, I can only send you on your way." 3 days had passed, but Xiao Chun still had not appeared. Yu Bai clearly did not plan to wait any longer. Hearing that, a trace of disappointment flashed through Gu Ling Yao's eyes. He thought inwardly, is he really not coming? Gu Ling Yao was a little disappointed that Xiao Chun did not appear. However, Gu Ling Yao did not show it on his face. He still shouted with a cold expression, "Humph. If you want to kill, then kill. Why do you have to speak so much nonsense?" "Ha! All right. Since junior sister Ling Yao wants to die, then I will fulfill your wish. Do it." Yu Bai smiled. As Yu Bai's voice fell, the surrounding disciples of the Iron Sword sect drew their swords and immediately prepared to kill the people of the Heavenly Qi sect. Looking at the actions of the disciples of the Iron Sword sect, the surrounding disciples of the various sects were certain that Gu Ling Yao and the rest were finished. A disciple arrived in front of Gu Ling Yao and raised the sword in his hand. Just as he was about to cut off Gu Ling Yao's head, a golden sword light suddenly flashed and instantly pierced through the disciple's heart. This sudden attack caused everyone to be stunned. However, a white-clothed young man quickly appeared in the sky above the black cloud mountain. The young man revealed a faint smile. His eyes looked towards Yu Bai and Lu Li as he spoke in an indifferent tone. "Are you in such a hurry? I haven't even arrived, and you're already in a hurry to kill?" Needless to say, the person who came was naturally Xiao Chun. Following the appearance of Xiao Chun, a smile quickly appeared on Gu Ling Yao's face as he secretly rejoiced in his heart. "I knew that you would definitely come." Chapter 558. Standing proudly in the sky, Xiao Chan said in an indifferent voice. Hearing this, Yu Bai and Lu Li also slowly rose into the air and faced Xiao Chun. Lu Li said with a charming smile, "You're Xiao Chun, the one who killed Zhou Hua? You're really a little handsome guy. If I want to kill you, I, your elder sister, am really somewhat reluctant. Xiao Chun, you really have the guts to come. But since you are here, it will save us a lot of trouble," Yu Bai said coldly as soon as Lu Li's voice faded. Both of them were stronger than Zhou Hua, so even though they knew that Xiao Chun had killed Zhou Hua, they were not afraid at all, because they also had the strength to kill Zhou Hua, and now it was 2 against 1. Facing 2 of the top 3 disciples of the Iron Sword sect at the same time, as they stared at the 3 of them in the sky, the surrounding disciples from the various sects held their breaths in concentration. They knew that an epic battle was about to erupt. As expected, the 3 of them did not say anything else after they finished speaking. A terrifying aura erupted from their bodies. They were all at the initial level of the Tao validation realm, but the strength of their aura was far beyond ordinary initial level of the Tao validation realm fighters. They all raised their aura to the peak. Then, Yu Bai took out his heavenly weapon and took a step forward. His figure instantly appeared in front of Xiao Chun, and his sword pierced out like lightning. Yu Bai made his move. His speed was extremely fast. With just one move, the battle strength that Yu Bai displayed had already surpassed Zhou Hua. I have to say, to be able to kill Zhou Hua, you are indeed a rare talent. If you pass the Glory Sect selection, you will definitely become a core disciple of Tianfeng Shengzong. But it's a pity that you killed someone from my Iron Sword sect. Today will be the day you die," Yu Bai said in an indifferent voice as the tip of the sword pointed straight at Xiao Chen's chest. Upon hearing these words, just as the sword was about to pierce through his chest, Xiao Chun leaned to the side in the nick of time, nimbly dodging Yu Bai's sword. At the same time, his storage ring flashed and the ink dragon sword appeared in his hand. With a flick of his wrist, Xiao Chun switched from defense to offense as he softly spoke. "It's still not certain who will die. Perhaps the person who will die today won't be me, but someone from your Iron Sword sect?" The main reason Xiao Chun appeared here was definitely to save Gu Ling Yao and the other disciples of the Tianqi sect. However, This did not mean that Xiao Chun did not have confidence in himself. It was a fact that Yu Bai and Lu Li were not weak, but was he, Xiao Chun, a weakling? Obviously not. 2 against 1. Xiao Chun did not necessarily have no chance of winning. If it was before, perhaps Xiao Chun really would not be a match for the two of them. However, with the tempered battle body, Xiao Chen's strength had probably surpassed the core disciples of Tianfeng Shengzhou. As a result, even if it was 1 against 2, he would not necessarily lose. This was where Xiao Chen's confidence came from, his confidence in his own strength. It was a peerlessly exquisite sword strike. Facing this sword strike, Yu Bai frowned slightly. He did not expect that Xiao Chun would actually be able to make such a sharp counterattack in such a short period of time. Moreover, whether it was the timing or the angle of the sword strike, Xiao Chen's comprehension of the way of the sword had already reached an extremely terrifying realm. The Iron Sword sect itself was a sect of the way of the sword. Almost all of its disciples were sword cultivators, so their comprehension of the way of the sword was naturally incomparable to the disciples of other sections. But even so, Xiao Chun, who came from the Tianqi sect, had a comprehension of the way of the sword that even Yu Bai was secretly shocked. Hurriedly dodging to the side, Yu Bai narrowly avoided Xiao Chen's sword. The sword tip missed and fiercely slashed on a mountain peak not far away. For a moment, the surrounding people could clearly see that there was actually a bottomless sword mark on a mountain peak. This sword strike almost split a mountain peak. This is Xiao Chen's strength. Many disciples softly exclaimed in shock. The power of the sword strike just now shocked many disciples. Even the 2 leaders of the Devil Temple and Whitewood sect were slightly taken aback. But soon the 2 of them laughed. Interesting. It seems that the Xiao Chun is more powerful than we imagined. Xiao Chen's strength had exceeded everyone's expectations. But just as the sword was about to slash down, Lu Li suddenly appeared behind Xiao Chun. Lu Li was using a flexible sword. The blade of the sword was as agile as a spirit snake. The sword was like a spirit snake that caught Xiao Chun off guard and wrapped around his neck. Ha! Little brother, have you forgotten that your opponent isn't just Yu Bai? There's also me. I'll be taking your head. Lu Bai's sneak attack completely caught Xiao Chun off guard. At this moment, as long as Lu Li exerted a little strength, the flexible sword would directly chop off Xiao Chen's head. A charming smile still hung on Xiao Chen's face, but in this regard, there wasn't the slightest trace of nervousness on his face. Instead, he said in a mocking tone, "Is that so? I'm afraid it won't be that easy to get my head." "Ha! Little brother, you're really stubborn. It seems that you won't shed tears until you see the coffin." Facing Xiao Chen's astonishment, the smile on Lu Li's face became even more charming. Then, she exerted a little strength in her hand, and the flexible sword was about to chop off Xiao Chen's head. Seeing this scene, many of the disciples present said in unison, "It's indeed too much to fight 1 against 2. If it's 1-on-1, perhaps Xiao Chun can compete with Yu Bai or Lu Li. But it's a pity that now, Lu Li's strength wasn't any weaker than Yu Bai's. Now that she had the upper hand, it seemed to everyone that Xiao Chun was dead for sure. While everyone was sighing inwardly, Gu Lingyao, who was standing on the peak of the dark cloud mountain, bellowed. Xiao Chun, facing such a hopeless situation, Gu Lingyao naturally didn't think that Xiao Chun could do anything. After all, Lu Li's sword was already at his neck and could easily chop off his head. Before he could say anything, Lu Li's flexible sword had already slashed across Xiao Chen's neck. It's over. It's really over this time. Everyone had the same thought. The people of the Celestial Equal sect turned ashen. However, after a few breaths, the scene of a head flying in all directions didn't happen. Xiao Chen's head didn't fly into the air after Lu Li's flexible sword slashed across his neck. Besides, what was even more unacceptable was that Xiao Chun actually spoke again. "Seems like your sword isn't sharp enough." Ghost. Definitely a ghost. When Xiao Chun spoke, everyone looked as though they had seen a ghost. Even Yu Bai and Lu Li were in disbelief. Lu Li was sure that her sword had slashed across Xiao Chen's neck. How could he be fine? Chapter 559. Xiaoqin was safe and sound. Regardless of whether it was the disciples of the various sects, Yu Bai, or Lu Li, everyone was filled with doubts. Lu Li's flexible sword had indeed slashed across Xiao Qin's neck. Moreover, Lu Li's flexible sword was a heaven-grade artifact, and it was impossible for a mortal body to contend against it. Her eyes were filled with disbelief as she looked at Xiao Qin. For the first time, Lu Li's expression changed. That extremely charming smile disappeared and was replaced by a solemn expression. "No, how is this possible?" Lu Li said with difficulty as she looked at Xiao Qin. Upon hearing Lu Li's words, Xiao Qin smiled indifferently. "How is this possible? Can't you understand such a simple logic? Your sword isn't sharp enough to cut through my body. It's that simple." Xiao Qin received Lu Li's sword head-on, and it was definitely a vital part of his body. But in the end, he was fine. This was indeed the only explanation. But how many people would believe this? Not to mention that Xiao Qin was only at the Dao validation stage. Even a Dao transformation stage powerhouse wouldn't be able to withstand the attack of a heaven-grade artifact with his mortal body. Could it be that Xiao Qin's body was stronger than a Dao transformation stage powerhouse's? This thought popped up in their minds, but it was immediately denied by Yu Bai and Lu Li. Not to mention that Xiao Qin was a sword cultivator and not a physique cultivator. Even if Xiao Qin was a physique cultivator, it was impossible for him to cultivate his body to the level of a Dao transformation stage powerhouse when he was in the Dao validation stage. This was absolutely impossible, and there was no physique cultivation technique that could do it. They absolutely didn't believe that Xiao Qin's body could be that strong. However, when Lu Li shifted her gaze to Xiao Qin's neck, she discovered that an extremely fine line of blood had gradually appeared on Xiao Qin's throat. It was a very shallow wound and was obviously caused by her sword attack. However, it only cut through the skin and didn't injure any vital parts. In other words, Lu Li's sword attack had really hit Xiao Qin. But just as Xiao Qin said, the power of that sword attack wasn't enough to cut through Xiao Qin's body. Lu Li's eyes widened abruptly. She was unwilling to believe the scene before her eyes, but this was the truth. Xiao Qin had indeed relied on his body to withstand her attack. While Lu Li was still in a daze, Xiao Qin suddenly swung his sword. Seeing this, Yu Bai shouted angrily, "Lu Li!" Lu Li only regained her senses when she heard Yu Bai shout. However, it was already too late. Xiao Qin's sword had already arrived in front of her. Fortunately, Yu Bai arrived in time and raised his sword to block Xiao Qin's attack, saving Lu Li. The power was extremely great. Even though Yu Bai managed to block the sword attack, the two of them were still pushed back dozens of meters. After forcibly stabilizing his body, Yu Bai's face was already ashen. They had only exchanged a few blows, but Xiao Qin's battle strength had already put them in danger. His gaze was fixed on Xiao Qin, who was not far away. At the same time, Xiao Qin shook his head in disappointment. "Didn't succeed? I thought I could get rid of one of them first." Xiao Qin also wanted to take advantage of Lu Li's momentary absent-mindedness to get rid of one of them first. This way, the rest of the matter would be simple. Unfortunately, Yu Bai's reaction was not fast enough. At the last moment, he actually saved Lu Li. Shaking his head in disappointment, Xiao Qin revealed a smile on his face. He looked at Yu Bai and Lu Li and smiled. "Forget it. If you're not dead, then so be it. It's just a little more troublesome." "Arrogant," Yu Bai shouted coldly when he heard Xiao Qin's words. "Arrogant? I don't think so. Talking nonsense without strength is called arrogance. As for me, I can only say that I'm confident. You two should know that when I killed Zhou Hua, I actually didn't use my full strength. I only used 70% of my strength." Xiao Qin's words could be said to be extremely shocking. Following his words, the disciples of the various sects around him were all stunned. "What was this called? You didn't use your full strength when you killed Zhou Hua? What kind of joke was this?" Zhou Hua was one of the 3 great disciples of the Steel Sword sect. In terms of strength, he wasn't inferior to the core disciples of the Tianqi sect. In the entire younger generation of Tianfeng Xingzong, only the 10 great direct disciples of Tianfeng Xingzong would dare to say that they could suppress Zhou Hua. Many people scoffed at Xiao Qian's words, saying that he didn't use his full strength to kill Zhou Hua. However, Xiao Qian soon used facts to tell everyone that he wasn't lying. As his voice faded, Xiao Qian's body suddenly emitted a ring of dense golden light. His entire body was bathed in the golden light. Xiao Qian seemed to have transformed into a demon god, making people want to worship him. Xiao Qian had used this golden light before when he killed Zhou Hua. It was also the golden light emitted by the tempered battle body. However, this time, the golden light around Xiao Qian's body was at least twice as strong as when he fought Zhou Hua. This is seeing Xiao Qian's transformation and feeling a terrifying pressure constantly pressing down on him. Yu Bai's eyes flashed with a hint of fear. As the #1 body refining technique in the Tiana continent, the tempered battle body was undoubtedly powerful. This could be seen from Xu Feng's breakthrough to the quasi-saint realm by relying on the tempered battle body. It was no exaggeration to say that Xu Feng was a typical physical sage. Moreover, Xu Feng hadn't successfully cultivated the tempered battle body until his death. He was just a dabbler, but even so, he still reached the quasi-saint realm. The qi and blood in Xiao Qian's body seemed to be boiling as he activated the body of 100 refinements at full power. This was also the first time Xiao Qian had used the body of 100 refinements at full power. He felt that there was endless power in his body, as if he could destroy the world with a casual punch. Such dense blood energy. What level has this boy's body reached? Feeling the pressure from Xiao Qian's body, the leader of the evil temple's disciples who were watching the battle from the side had a slight change in expression. He was also a body-refining martial artist, and, at the same time, he also cultivated a high-grade heaven-level body-refining technique from the evil temple. Among the younger generation of the Skywind Mansion, he believed that his body was definitely ranked in the top 3. But now, compared to Xiao Qian, he was simply trash. The power of the tempered battle body made everyone's expression change. At the same time, Xiao Qian slightly bent his legs and fiercely stomped on the ground. Without the slightest fancy footwork, he relied solely on his terrifying strength and instantly shot towards Yu Bai and Lu Li like a cannonball. Xiao Qian's powerful strength caused a burst of sonic booms wherever he passed. Facing Xiao Qian's attack, Yu Bai was already regretting it. If he had known that Xiao Qian was hiding his strength when he killed Zhou Hua, he would never have rashly confronted Xiao Qian head-on. He wouldn't even have taken the initiative to provoke Xiao Qian. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.